It's already a big story of success. This is the historical event, Hope Probe. Don't forget to check out the hashtags, hashtag Hope Probe and hashtag Arabs to Mars. And of course, in the UAE, always hashtag impossible is possible. Back to you guys in the studio.
And of course, if you want to get involved in the conversation on social media, we are at Dubai One TV. We're going to be reading out some of our favourite tweets, some of our favourite messages this evening. That was our reporter, Jad Shahaib, on location with His Excellency Sahel Al-Mazroui, the UAE Minister of Energy and Infrastructure. Lots of VIP guests coming up tonight.
Yes, we'll be keeping an eye on Jad down at Burj Plaza. Thanks, Jad. Now, we all remember how this journey started just under 7 months ago. It was Sunday, the 19th of July 2020, and after several delays due to poor weather conditions at the launch site at Japan's Tanegashima Space Center, the world finally heard the first ever countdown to launch in Arabic. Let's remind ourselves of that historic moment.
10 9 2 1 إطلاق.
Just saw there the launch of the Hope Probe about 7 months ago, the first time the countdown was ever delivered in Arabic. Now, someone who knows just how much is at stake tonight is the Executive Director of the Space Sector at the UAE Space Agency. We're delighted to have him in the studio, Fahad Al-Mazroui. Thank you so much for joining us. What a night. Now, you joined the launch about 2 months before the probe took off to Mars. How are you feeling this evening?
Well, I mean, you can imagine, as His Excellency mentioned, I mean, the air is just ecstatic. If it would be appropriate, I'd probably jumping up and down on the table here in about an hour when everything moves forward. But, you know, it's not just about how we feel as part of the team. I mean, as you mentioned, I only joined the space agency actually almost a year ago now. And I was with you, Raymond, 7 months ago here in the studios when we had the launch. So it was an amazing accomplishment, really, then. And we are really excited about the MOI that's going to happen.
How do you feel watching back that footage, seeing the launch, hearing the historic countdown, the first time ever in Arabic? It was a truly amazing moment.
Definitely. I mean, so much has happened since then. You can imagine the whole Arab world is in on this now, right? And His Highness has, you know, the whole leadership of the UAE have really been supportive of this with everything that's been happening. I think if you look around the UAE tonight, you'll see all the landmarks lit up in red, you know, representing the glow of what I guess the Hope Probe will be seeing as it enters the Mars orbit insertion. We've seen the huge landmarks from Burj Al Arab, Burj Khalifa, Emirates Palace. You've got hotels. I've seen the Jebel Ali Hotel, forts around the country, and we've even seen really landmarks across Arab countries as well being lit up to really celebrate this moment. It's not just for the UAE, it is for all the Arabs, and it is to show and really represent the Arab world going back and showing what we can do with determination, with the leadership that we have, that nothing is impossible.
It really is a defining moment, isn't it? How did it all first come together? Because as we mentioned earlier, the project was initially announced about 6 years ago. There were a few skeptics back there at the time. How did it first all come together?
Well, it was first announced by His Highness and in 2014. Again, 6 years ago, that's a long time ago if you think about it, right? But programs like this do actually usually take about 10 years from a design phase all the way. And the UAE with the team have done such a great job in pulling it all together now just in the last 6 years. It's been an amazing accomplishment, an amazing experience for the UAE nationals, the 200 UAE nationals who have been part of this journey right from the start. I wish I was there at that time. I wish I was around to have experienced that as well myself. But it's just an honor to be here, though, and experience it now and represent the UAE Space Agency here with you today.
One of the big topics which we can't avoid is COVID, and obviously the launch went ahead despite the coronavirus pandemic, in spite of all the obstacles that puts up. And of course, you know, now hope is on its way to Mars, and we're hoping for good news this evening. But how have you seen things change since that launch? The kind of the awareness of the UAE space program, is it increasing around the world?
Yes, definitely is increasing around the world. We're constantly in communication with countries all over the world. You may know we have the Arab Space Cooperation Group that was established. It was also an announcement by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid back in March 2019, where this group was created. And it represents 14 different space agencies and countries of the Arab world who, you know, we have been in support to grow the knowledge and awareness about what's happening in space. We've seen great initiatives coming out from some of those countries today. You know, Saudi Arabia have set things up as well, and they have the space agency, and they have a space law that's also been announced. And so a lot of things are happening, and we're looking at starting up a lot of initiatives there.
I mean, we typically see the big headlines from organisations like NASA, the European Space Agency, and I think this mission is a really important way to show that, you know, some of the smaller players can still have a big impact.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, China is also a huge player today, which never was in the scene before. India as well is a big player now, and now, of course, with the UAE coming in. And as was mentioned, there's not many countries who have gotten to where we are today.
Yeah.
So it's a huge opportunity for us to really be punching about our weight.
And it's interesting because, you know, it's kind of a, I don't know if it's competitive. You can maybe tell me, is it competitive? But at the moment, you know, there's another mission tomorrow from China on the 18th of this month. There's the US with a rover. So, you know, is it competitive or is it very collaborative?
Well, look, competition is always good, right? But when it's about going to Mars, I think everyone just really wants to make sure they get there safely. So, of course, whenever there's talk, you know, we're always banting about it. I think as any engineer would and as any person would. But this week is actually the next 10 days is going to be massive for science, for the you know, humankind, and knowledge really about what's happening. So as you mentioned, Perseverance is going in. They have a first as well where they have Ingenuity. So they'll have the first flight going out. They have a device called MOXIE on there, which is actually going to be looking at converting the CO2 in the Mars atmosphere into oxygen. So these are all interesting tests that are going to be happening during that time.
Fascinating. Fahad, you're going to stick around throughout the entire show, which we're very grateful for. It's the reason we rebooked you, because you're so good. You've got so much knowledge about the UAE space sector, so thank you very much. But now, time for another guest. The Hope probe, of course, was designed and built by Emirati engineers in partnership with other space agencies around the world.
Collaborating on the mission since it started 6 years ago is a team of scientists at the University of Colorado, Boulder.
David Brain is the Mars planetary scientist at the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics at the university, and he joins us now via video call from the good old US of A. David, good evening, good afternoon, perhaps morning for you. How are you doing this evening?
Doing very well. Thanks a lot for having me, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the programme. Now, of course, you worked with the UAE team to design and build the systems and onboard instruments that will study the red planet. What specifically did you work on, and how did the collaboration come about?
Yeah, the collaboration came about in a very interesting way, but the teams really meshed together very well. So people from the Emirates selected their partners very carefully, and we decided together to study the atmosphere of Mars. My role here was not associated with any one measurement or instrument, but instead to help oversee the entire science of the mission with my partners at MBRSC in Dubai.
So what kind of information will HOPE be gathering if the probe is successful? And how will this help us better understand climate change back here on Earth?
Yeah, HOPE will be gathering information, observations about the entire Martian atmosphere. And this is a new way of looking at the Martian atmosphere. Most previous missions have looked at one single time of day, but HOPE will be looking at the global atmosphere in every geographic region at every time of day. And when you do something like that, you can figure out how different regions are connected to each other, how the bottom of the atmosphere connects to the top of the atmosphere. You learn about how the entire atmosphere works as a system. And when you get an understanding like this, it can feed back on how your understanding of atmospheres work at any place in the solar system for any planet.
Of course, you know, all eyes are on the probe tonight. What would you say is the riskiest part of the Mars orbit insertion, or is it just the whole thing?
It's the whole thing. It's one of the two most critical times in the mission, and we've already passed the first test of launch. The second test is being able to successfully stop when we've arrived at our destination. So this 27 minutes of burn from the spacecraft from start to finish will be a little bit nerve-wracking, but the team has practiced hard. And after we get information back from the probe, we'll be able to tell if we are in an orbit that will be able to help us move forward and complete our science mission.
Well, as we just mentioned, there is a 50% chance that the mission does go to plan. That also means 50% it doesn't go to plan. What is the outcome if this project is not a success?
Well, I think the project has already been a success given the programmatic goals of the mission. So I'm not too worried about that aspect of the success. But for the scientists who want to get the observations, I'm not ready to throw in the towel if we get initial indications that things haven't gone well. There may be ways to help the spacecraft recover, and so it could take hours even to figure out whether we have a viable mission going forward. Of course, if we don't end up having a viable mission, if we aren't able to get those observations that we hoped for, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and we'll have to find another way to get the information that we set out to gather.
Well, David, thank you very much for joining us this evening. That is David Brain on the line directly from the US. He's been heavily involved in the project since the beginning. Fahad, I wanted to bring you back in here. We were speaking a little bit earlier about a bit of healthy competition between China and the US as well. I wondered if you could take us through some of the differences between our mission to Mars versus there. We know that the US team is going to be touching down on Mars. I know they have a rover. It's set to be the fastest ever rover, still moving at a glacial pace. What are some of the differences? Why aren't we touching to... Actually, Fahad, just wait there 1 minute. I'll be back in just a second. I've just heard we've got a very special guest on location at the Burj Khalifa. Let's take a look at the world's tallest tower, lighting up tonight with a very special message for the world.
this programme. But tonight, of course, is the most critical moment, whether Hope can enter the red planet's orbit. Once it reaches Mars, it will spend 2 years collecting scientific data.
Now, this will allow scientists to create a complete picture of the Martian atmosphere and its layers and better understand why it turned from a lush, vibrant planet into a cold, barren desert. Well, earlier today, I stepped into virtual space to get a detailed look at exactly how it works.
2020, a significant date for the UAE and a major milestone in the Emirates' space race. The date that the UAE launched the Hope probe into deep space in the first ever Arab mission to Mars, the culmination of a 6-year effort from around 200 Emirati engineers, scientists and researchers. Now, whilst the objective of the Mars mission is to provide a detailed understanding of the climate and weather conditions of the red planet, the probe is a foundation for a much bigger goal, building a human settlement on Mars within the next 100 years. At around the size of a car, the Hope probe was launched in the early hours on board an H-2A rocket from Takashima Spaceport in Japan, beginning its journey of close to 500 million kilometres. The Hope probe separated from the launcher around an hour after liftoff, a critical moment in the entire launch process, timed precisely right for the Earth's closest alignment with Mars, a process which takes place only every 2 years. Now, as it settled its trajectory into space, the Hope probe deployed its solar panels and its sensors to locate the sun, manoeuvring to direct the panels towards the sun to begin charging the onboard battery. With the power switched on, the first signals from the Hope probe were detected by the NASA Deep Space Network ground station in Spain. As the unmanned spacecraft continued towards Mars, it used star tracking equipment to determine its location and direction, and ultimately to keep it right on track. 2 days after its launch, the Hope probe entered deep space, capturing and relaying the very first image of its final destination, Mars. It had already travelled 1 million kilometres from Earth, moving at a speed of around 120,000 kilometres per hour. On August the 11th, the Hope probe performed its first trajectory correction manoeuvre, firing its thrusters to ensure it was positioned on the best path to Mars, a critical moment as the first TCM performed since separating from the launcher. Now, during this time, the mission team conducted safety tests for around 45 days to ensure that the probe's instruments and systems were working perfectly and efficiently on board. On August the 24th, the Hope probe shared a second image of Mars. The photo showed that Hope had passed Saturn and Jupiter, with only Mars still ahead, marking 100 kilometres in its journey to the red planet, the equivalent of around 130 trips from Earth to the Moon. On August the 28th, the second trajectory correction manoeuvres were performed to further adjust its position towards Mars. It was now more than 200 kilometres into its journey and almost at the halfway mark. 2.5 months later, on November the 8th, the Hope probe successfully performed its third trajectory manoeuvre, setting the date of arrival to the orbit for February the 9th, 2021 at 7:42 p.m. local time. Now, during this phase, the team used the probe's 3 science instruments for the first time in space, conducting regular checks to ensure they were operating correctly ahead of their work to study the red planet's weather conditions. Tonight, the Hope probe will enter its 4th and most critical stage of its 7-month journey, the Mars orbit insertion. Now, the Hope probe will use its thrusters to burn off half of its fuel, drastically reducing its speed in order to safely enter Mars's orbit. Now, this process has a success rate of just 50%. If the Hope probe goes too fast or too slow, it could crash on Mars or miss its orbit entirely. But if all goes to plan, tonight will make the UAE go down in history as only the 5th country in the world to ever reach the red planet. Now, after entering Mars's orbit, the information that the probe's 3 special instruments collects over the next 2 years will help scientists begin to understand what the climate and weather is like here at different layers of the Martian atmosphere and create the first global picture of how the Martian atmosphere changes not only during the day but during the entire seasons as well. Now, researchers also plan to study why Mars's atmosphere is losing hydrogen and oxygen and the reasons behind the planet's drastic climate change. It's hoped this will help scientists better understand and be able to answer important environmental questions about our own planet as well. Several dozen probes have set off for Mars since the 1960s. Many never made it that far or failed to land. Only India has managed to enter the planet's orbit in a first attempt. Now, the UAE's mission is particularly unique, with an endeavour that has never been pursued by any other nation. Whilst other probes have orbited between the north and south poles of Mars, the HOPE probe orbits around Mars in an elliptical manner, completing a loop around the planet's equator every 55 hours. Now, this allows it to get as close as 20,000 kilometres to the Martian planet, the smallest ever distance reached by the probe to the surface of Mars. Its unusual elliptical orbit will allow it to observe the entire planet across both night and day in each cycle. Now, it's this orbit that will allow the UAE to complete the first ever planet-wide 24/7 picture of Mars's atmosphere and weather. Tonight, the UAE will lead the Arab world to new frontiers in deep space for the first time in history, acting as a catalyst to further accelerate the development of the education and technology sectors. Now, with the HOPE probe created by a team of Emirati engineers, scientists and researchers with an average age of just 27 years, and with women making up around 80% of the team, there's no doubt in anyone's minds just how important this mission really is. So as the UAE prepares to mark the 50th anniversary of the formation of the United Arab Emirates, tonight's milestone serves as a lasting reminder that for the UAE, not even the sky is the limit.
That looked like fun.
It was a lot of fun. I haven't done something like that before.
No, you haven't spent 7 minutes on Mars before. I'm so surprised.
That's on the calendar next week.
OK, our next guest has been involved in more than half a dozen NASA experiments. We're going to chat to him in a moment, though, because first we're going to throw to the break. Remember, if you want to get involved, you can join us at Dubai One TV. Going to hold that briefing.
Well, coming up after this break, the audit
of the iron rose.
Is it really fast?
No.
Do you eat it on Sundays?
Dad!
Hey!
Hold on, guys.
Daddy, be careful on the road.
Jerry?
Get back in your car right now!
Come on, we're getting out of here. We've lost the East Coast.
Honey?
China's dark. What is this?
We don't know.
World War Z, tonight, 10 p.m. UAE, 6 p.m. GMT. On Dubai One. This movie is brought to you by
Important information about COVID-19 vaccination. Can I stop wearing the mask after receiving the COVID-19 vaccination? You must keep wearing a mask and continue to take precautionary measures to prevent COVID-19. Is vaccination safe for people with chronic diseases? Yes, vaccination is safe and effective, and it is recommended for people with chronic diseases because they are among the groups most vulnerable to complications of COVID-19. Can the date of the second dose of vaccination be changed to another day? We recommend that you adhere to the vaccination procedures and dates to ensure that you acquire the required level of immunity. Note, the second dose of the vaccination will be administered 21 days after receiving the first dose. Is it safe to combine more than one type of COVID-19 vaccination? No, it is not safe to receive different types of vaccines.
Welcome back. You are watching Dubai One TV's live special coverage of the Emirates mission to Mars. This evening, we're going to be speaking to the biggest experts all over the world, from NASA and beyond, to find out who exactly has been involved in this mission and why it's so important.
Yes, and our next guest has been involved in more than half a dozen NASA planetary, lunar and solar missions over the decades, starting with the Viking Mars landers of the 1970s, and is now the principal investigator for the Maven orbiter, which is currently gathering data from the Red Planet.
Now, he says that the Emirates Mars mission builds on all the missions that have come before it. He is a vital member of the science team for the UAE Mars mission, and he joins us now live from Colorado. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, you've been an integral part of the project for 6 years. How are you feeling right now, the anticipation?
It's exciting and at the same time very nerve-wracking because of the risk of going into orbit.
It is exciting, Bruce, and there is only, as we know, a 50% chance of success. What can we expect, though, if it does go to plan?
Well, first of all, that 50% is based on historical success rates. I think that this team has done everything that it can to be able to go into orbit successfully, and I'm very optimistic.
Now, we've heard there are 4 potential outcomes. We could either miss Mars entirely, we could potentially crash into Mars, we could do a bit of a loop around Mars, or the one we're all hoping for, it will be a successful plan. Take us through some of the potential options tonight.
Well, it's really hard to predict because everything is going according to plan right now. We're about 20 minutes away from the rocket motor burn to put us into orbit, and it's very hard to know what might go wrong. Anything that we think can go wrong has been addressed, but there are so many things. We've never gone into orbit around Mars with this spacecraft, even though we've tested the engines, we've tested the sequence. If something does go wrong, the team is standing by ready and do their best to recover from it.
Now, of course, we are all hoping that everything goes according to plan, but why is it so important that we gather this data with the HOPE probe over the next couple of years? You know, why do we need to understand more about Mars's atmosphere?
We're interested in understanding Mars for a number of reasons. One is by understanding how planets work, by understanding how the atmosphere and climate works on a planet with different boundary conditions than our own Earth. We learn more about how the Earth works. We're also trying to get at questions related to the habitability of Mars by microbes, whether there might be life there. And answering that question is really, in some sense, one of the overarching questions for Mars. Can we learn whether there's life there? What is that going to tell us about the origin of life here on Earth or about the distribution of life throughout the galaxy?
Now, the information that HOPE gathers will also be shared with the world for free to around 200 research centres. That seems quite unusual, but it's been an important part of the entire mission.
Well, that's one of the things that excites me. From the very beginning, the goal was not just to do a publicity stunt of getting to Mars, but to be able to contribute to the international scientific effort on Mars. And that's been an incredibly deep component of the effort so far. As a scientist working on Mars climate data, I'm very much looking forward to this data and to integrating it with everything else we know about Mars. No one probe can answer every question, but we're sending a lot of spacecraft to Mars, and that lets us bring a lot of data together to address some of the fundamental questions.
Now, of course, Bruce, 2 other probes will arrive at Mars this month, one tomorrow and one on the 18th. What can we expect from them? You know, how different will the data that they collect be from the HOPE probe?
They're all very different. The Chinese probe is the one that arrives tomorrow. They'll go into orbit, and they also carry a rover that will go down to the surface. The orbiter will be studying the atmosphere and the upper atmosphere in ways similar to what Maven is doing. The rover is going to analyze the surface chemistry and take images of the surface. In a couple of weeks, the United States is landing its Perseverance rover. That's a car-size rover that is going to be looking at possible evidence for life on Mars, and we'll be collecting samples that we can bring back from Mars to the Earth to study. So they're all very different from each other, yet very complementary, each one doing a different part, addressing a different part of the overall problem of understanding Mars.
And I think having this progress, whichever country it comes from, and being able to share and collaborate this information is so important. Of course, here in the UAE, it's hoped that the information we collect is really going to help set the stage in terms of establishing a human settlement on Mars. The UAE leaders have said they plan to do it within 100 years. How will this mission form a part of that?
There are so many hazards and so many risks associated with sending humans to Mars. Everything we know about the Mars environment helps us. By learning about the atmosphere and the surface, it helps get rid of those risks so we know what we're facing. Equally importantly, by understanding some of the issues about the Mars environment, it lets us frame the questions that we want to address when we do send humans. Is there life on Mars, or was there ever life on Mars? And why or why not?
Now, I have to say, you've been very much involved in the project. So working with our team here, we know there was around 200 Emirati engineers, scientists, researchers, and a remarkably young team, around 27 years old. So I want to ask you, what was your experience of working with them? What was that like?
Well, the first thing is that I've been incredibly impressed with the passion devoted to this mission, not just from the engineers and scientists working in the Mohammed bin Rashid Science Center, but all the way up what we call the food chain to the senior politicians, the senior leaders in the country. Everybody is enthusiastic, and the goals of the program are not just to learn about Mars, but to elevate the Arab world scientifically and to support the youth of the country to demonstrate what we can do, what the United Arab Emirates can do. To me, this combination of the science and the passion and the political goals, the social and societal goals, really set the Emirates Mars mission apart from most other Mars missions.
Bruce Chakosky, thank you so much for joining us, giving up your precious time all the way from the USA. Really appreciate it. Fahad, how do you respond when you hear Bruce talking in such sort of glowing terms about the experience of working with the Emirati team? It is a young team, but they're very talented.
Makes us all proud. And I think, as Bruce mentioned, it's really coming from the top, right? It's coming from the leadership, and this is what really drives this country forward and has the youth so passionate about everything they do.
And I think that's something we're hoping to see a lot more of, aren't we? I know one of the aims of this mission is, of course, to get information about Mars, but also really to stimulate the economy, make it more of a knowledge-based economy. Fahad, if you can sit tight, a few more questions for you. However, our special reporter, Jan Shahayeb, is down on location. He is at the Burj Plaza. We'll get across to him now. He's got a very special guest with him this evening. We're just hearing we're having a little bit of a signal delay. So, Fahad, I want to ask you about how wonderful it is to be able to get such great feedback. What was it like collaborating with some of the big teams from NASA or from Europe as well?
Well, I think it's just been a huge opportunity for the team. You know, it's 200 UAE nationals have had the opportunity. They've traveled to the US, they've worked in the labs there, worked among experts, scientists, researchers, people who have done this before. And so it's nothing, it's nothing short but amazing, really, as an opportunity for them now to come and have put together the Emirates Mars mission and to show really where it is today.
Lots of guests here on this show, lots of guests down with Jad at the Burj Plaza. We'll be catching up with him in just a moment, but you know, one of the lucky things that we've had on this program throughout this whole experience is the number of people that have been working on it that are so talented, and they want to share that story because they want to excite the next generation, the people watching at home, and the younger generation as well. And I think that's one of the key messages we talked about last time. Yeah. Young people have been infused by this, and we're seeing an increase in the STEM subjects, the science subjects, aren't we?
Yes, I mean, if you go back to 1976, that was the year when His Highness Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, God bless his soul, first met with the Apollo 17 astronauts here in the UAE with NASA, and it was an exciting moment where they actually brought a rock from the moon with them. And that was a dream, right? The UAE was 5 years old at the time, and we are here today realizing Sheikh Zayed's dream of actually going out into space. And so you can imagine the excitement about that. And now moving forward, right, 2117, right, 2117 Mars mission. That's when we hope to be there. That's when we hope to have humanity there. And if nobody else does it until then, we will definitely do it in honor of our leadership today.
Well, I believe that we can hand over to Jad now. He's down at Burj Plaza, and he's getting some of the big interviews down there, talking with some of the top people down there to find out what's been going out and what the latest situation is as well. So, over to you, Jad.
All right. Yes, I'm still right here at Burj Plaza, right in front of Burj Khalifa, and really our hearts are beating. We're all extremely excited. And with me right now is Dr. Eric Xing, and he's the president of the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. How are you today, and how are you feeling?
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to watch this amazing event. Yes, congratulations to the Arab world and to UAE for achieving this amazing goal.
Congratulations to all of us all around the world. Really, this is something to really be proud of. Yeah, so I know that the Hope probe, upon its successful arrival to, hopefully, to Mars's orbit, is going to collect a lot of data. How is this going to influence or change the way we see science, and how is it going to change our future, possibly?
You know, Mars to the human being on Earth is an unknown world. So any data coming to us is a mystery. So, you know, all this data will expand our knowledge about the space, about the universe, and also about our Earth itself, because we may be learning, you know, a lot of, knowledge and maybe lessons from how Mars evolved in the past and how to protect our environment and how to make best use of a resource.
Because there's a lot of similarities between Earth and Mars, right?
Exactly. You know, we don't know whether Mars is our future or our past, right? So
what do we learn, like, from maybe the challenges that faced Mars? How can we fix maybe or find solutions for the challenges that we face here on Earth? And what is this message that's going to be delivered for the youth and the new generation?
Well, I think, Mars provides us a very good living example for how to build a ecosystem and how to build an environment that humans can thrive and survive and thrive, and also maybe build the future generations. And I believe all this data will be providing us a lot of knowledge to understand how geology, how atmosphere, how environment is changing, in light of many of the changes and other interactions between the universe and also the ecosystem, solar system.
What's the next step after doing all of this and after gathering all of this information? Do you have any insights or anything that in the near future we might be able to explore?
In near future, I think we're going to collect a lot of information to improve, our experience and our knowledge about the space. But in the long run, I was looking forward to learn more about this planet so that we can move there. And, I wouldn't use the word colonize, but explore and expand, our living system and our environment.
Thank you so much for being with us, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, 6 years ago we watched the movie The Martian, and it was like a dream. Maybe it was a sci-fi movie, but now it's right here in the UAE. The future is right here and right now. I'll go back to you guys in the studio right now, and I'll keep you posted if I have more interviews and with any more valuable information. So back to you guys.
Thank you, Jad. We're going to be crossing back and forth to him this evening throughout these celebrations and excitement live down at Burj Plaza. Well, if you want to get involved in the conversation on social media, make sure you tweet us. We are at Dubai One TV. Don't forget to use the hashtag Arabs to Mars. Now, the UAE has joined the world's leading nations in space research and exploration, opening up opportunities to form and accelerate the local financial landscape.
Dubai One's business editor Greg Fairley explains just what the country is doing to turn itself into a sustainable knowledge-based economy and why that's more important than ever before.
And good evening. The UAE is fast becoming a major player in the space exploration sector. This has substantial scope for science and also, importantly, for business. This mission reflects a broader aim here in the Emirates to drive innovation in science and technology and continue to diversify the local economy. The probe serves as a catalyst for accelerating the advancement towards a knowledge-based economy that retains world-class researchers to work in scientific and technological fields. What is a knowledge-based economy and how can it catapult the UAE into the next era of growth? The UAE's Vision 2021 calls for the UAE to be a nation that is united in knowledge and where innovation also plays a key part. Getting the next generation of talent ready for a new age jobs market is essential for the continued success and progress of the UAE's economy. The investment-friendly environment here and ease of doing business continues to attract and anchor knowledge. Dr. Nasser Saidi is a former chief economist at Dubai International Financial Centre and is currently president of Nasser Saidi and Associates. I asked him earlier about the economic impact of the UAE Mars probe mission. This is what he had to say.
When you talk about a knowledge economy, you're really talking today about digital-based economies. And many of the activities and knowledge that you require for the space economy also translate into knowledge you're going to use for the digital economy and expanding the digital economy. So with time, I think what it means is that the UAE will invest more and more into STEM, into science, technology, engineering, and medicine activities. When you think further ahead, you want to think of space as a launching pad for space exploration into the moon and elsewhere. But I think also what's very important is to get young Emiratis engaged in this. And I think this is what's happening now, already happened with the Mars probe. We just need to widen the scope of the activities. And it has to start with education above all. That's where you build it.
The Hope probe, as officials point out, shapes a globally competitive economy that has a mission to find real solutions to the challenges we are going through today and those that will undoubtedly present themselves in the future. It prioritises the diversification and resilience of the UAE economy's resources based on science and technology. With this year being the 50th anniversary of the UAE's foundation, the probe to Mars leads the path to further diversity of the economy, easing dependence on oil and gas. The UAE is one of the most attractive destinations globally for foreign talent and investment. With this important mission to the Red Planet, the country continues to embrace science and knowledge as we move into a new era of entrepreneurship, innovation and prosperity. Now, back to you.
That was Greg Fairley, our business presenter for Emirates News. Well, it's a really interesting time. It's about 7:30. In about 10 to 12 minutes, the Hope probe will begin burning about 50% of its fuel. Now, go down enough to be able to enter Mars's orbit. If they go too fast, too slow, they could crash or miss the orbit entirely. It really is a pivotal moment of the entire mission. We're going to have more on that very subject for you a little bit later this evening. Please keep watching Dubai One's special live coverage of the Emirates mission to Mars. Don't go anywhere.
35 years old. He still lives at home. That is not normal.
I've lived upstairs since I was 3.
It's going to take a stick of dynamite to get me out of my parents' house.
I am a professional motivator. For many young men, self-esteem develops. So I simulate one.
Can we have a drink tonight?
I can have your son moved out of this house by June 15th.
Hallelujah!
For starters, you could make life a little more difficult for him.
Yeah. Your bathroom needs cleaning. When you're done with the rubber gloves, turn them inside out.
Something's wrong with your mom.
I'm with him. Oh, emotional crisis day is so critical. Totally bonds us. What's his real name anyway?
I don't know. I just clean their teeth and chop off their...
I had a nice time.
I did too.
Good night.
Failure to launch, Wednesday, 10 p.m. UAE, 6 p.m. GMT. On Dubai One.
This movie is brought to you by
الخير هو اختيار لواكر منبع الخير.
Dubai Eye. One show will keep you informed and aware of the latest breaking news and government announcements. Interviews with government business experts to explore global and local markets and the latest updates of Dubai Expo. A platform to ask questions and get advice from the people in the know. Dubai Eye live on Dubai One, Sunday to Thursday, 6 a.m. UAE, 2 a.m. GMT on Dubai One.
You are watching Dubai One TV's special live coverage of the Emirates mission to Mars. If you want to join us on social media, we are at Dubai One TV. Make sure you use the hashtag Arabs to Mars.
Now, if tonight's Mars orbit insertion is successful, the Hope probe will spend the next 2 years gathering data for scientists back on Earth. Of course, most Mars satellites fly low enough to study the surface craters in detail, but researchers say this also limits their ability to study its global weather pattern.
That's right. Now, Hope's journey is particularly unique as it will fly higher than previous Martian satellites, providing the very first complete view of its atmosphere day and night and season to season.
Françoise Forget is a research scientist who has worked on projects designed to model the environment on other worlds, including Mars, and currently he's the research director at the National Centre for Scientific Research in Paris, where he worked closely with the Hope probe's science team, and he joins us now all the way from France. Good evening for us, Françoise. Good afternoon for you. Tell us about your work with the UAE team.
Yeah, I'm a specialist of the Martian climate and atmosphere, and so I'm interested in many aspects of the science of the mission. As for us in our team, what we provide to the science team is tools which are in fact numerical models that simulate the Martian climate. So you all know weather forecast models that are used on the Earth or climate modeling, climate change models. So we do the same on Mars, and we try to understand what's going on. It's not easy because sometimes we are surprised, but most of the time, just on the basis of well-known equations, we can understand what's going on, and we hope that to have a lot of data feeding our investigation with the Hope probe.
Now, the interesting thing about the HOPE probe is its elliptical orbit. It's quite unusual compared to previous missions. Why have the team behind the Emirates Mars mission chosen this elliptical orbit? What makes it so special?
Oh yeah, it's a very good idea. There are two big good reasons. The first one is that you know that we had already a space mission which has observed the climate and the meteorology. But most of the time they were operating in low orbit, so we will just see slices of the atmosphere. When you're far away, you can see everything at the same time. And it's good for several reasons. The first one is that you can see different local time. You can see the morning, noon, the afternoon. Before that, sometimes we only see some mission has always seen the afternoon, only the afternoon. We don't know Mars in the morning. Sounds stupid, but it's true. So we will have a good coverage of that. The other reason is that the orbit is well organized so that we will go down to 20,000 kilometer altitude, and then we will rotate the planet. So for 12 hours, we will see the same hemisphere. So if something happens, for instance, a dust storm starts, we'll monitor its evolution for 12 hours. And we have never done that before. So it's interesting. And then we will go up again. The planet will rotate below the spacecraft, and then we'll go back to another place and continue the investigation. So it's a completely new view. And I don't know if you realize, but we have very little, almost no nice images of the entire Mars planet. Usually we use image from Hubble, the Hubble Space Telescope, which is just near the Earth. With this mission, we have a lot of beautiful big images of Mars, like with Mars crescents, and it will be a completely new for science, but also for the image of Mars as well.
I love hearing your excitement for this, Francoise. I mean, it's palpable, you can tell. What are you looking forward to most? What are you hoping to see when those images start coming through?
So I told you I like the images, but from the scientific point of view, I can tell you what I'm looking forward to. It's a little technical. It's really the detail of the hour after hour evolution of what we call the diurnal cycle. You know, what is going on in the morning, the big clouds, and then they change in the morning, and then they disappear at noon, and then they start again. We don't have this information. And same for the temperature. We have atmospheric sounder able to measure the temperature in the atmosphere. We call that the temperature profile, and we will see the evolution. And me as a scientist, it will be exciting because I will see what we call thermal tide waves. So fluid dynamic stuff that are interesting for meteorologists like me. And it will be the first time.
It really is an incredible time, isn't it? And a lot of missions have failed at this. I think we saw around a dozen missions since the mid-60s attempt to go to Mars. Why have so many failed?
You asking me the question? Yeah, it's a good question for me because I've been involved in 2 missions that failed, 2 American missions. It's usually failed because of surprising, unexpected things. One I was on was Mars Observer in the 90s, and it failed because several days before orbit insertion, they started to prepare the engine, the rocket engine, and suddenly an explosion. It was lost. But the other failure is very interesting. It was in 1999, September 1999. The spacecraft, the Mars Climate Orbiter was the name, a little bit like HOPE in some way regarding its science goal, was supposed to enter orbit at around 250 kilometer altitude. But instead it went through the atmosphere and burned. And the reason why, a very interesting problem, there were some disagreement, misunderstanding between the engineering team from the industrial company and NASA. They were using other units. They were using pounds, and NASA was using newtons. That's to measure the forces of the rocket engine. And this was the origin of the failure. So it was completely unexpected. I hope there won't be such a problem today.
I can tell you're obviously excited about this mission. Is there anything, though, that we won't be able to learn from this mission? What's the next stage? What's the next stage of the adventure possibly launched by the UAE that you'd like to find out about Mars?
There are so many things, because Mars is more than just one planet in some way, because we have the planet that we will observe today with the HOPE mission, for instance, with this very rich meteorology and climate. But we also have the planet of the past, when Mars was covered by glaciers. I'm interested in that. When Mars was also, even before, covered by lakes and rivers. So we have lots of things, and it's full of mysteries. If we continue the science of hope regarding, I think the next step, if you ask me, will be to measure winds. It turns out it's a little technical, but we only measure temperature with this mission and the previous mission, and we now starting to have technology to measure winds from orbit. It's very difficult, and being a meteorologist, you see I'm very focused. I will dream of being able to measure winds and understand even better the winds and the meteorology on this planet.
Well, Francois, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insights, and we look forward to being able to update you, hopefully within the next 20-25 minutes, about whether we have a signal from the HOPE probe. Thank you. That is Francois Forguet, direct from Paris. Well, I've been told we have entered the blind officially. We are about 30 minutes without communication to the HOPE probe. Now, of course, there is an 11-minute communication delay between the HOPE probe and mission control back onto Earth. So there will be around 30 minutes as a total. We are hoping the earliest 8:08 p.m. this evening we may be receiving a signal that this mission has been a success. Although, of course, as the UAE leaders have said, even though there is a 50% chance of success rate, the project has already achieved 90% of its goals. Well, I'd like to welcome back our studio guest who's been patiently waiting here this evening with us. It is Fahad Al-Mahiri from the Space Agency. Fahad, thank you so much for staying with us. Now, one of the really interesting things about sending a rocket to Mars or anywhere is about 91% of it is made up of fuel. And you say the secret to getting man to Mars may be involved in bringing 3D printers up into space.
Well, going into that, as you mentioned, there's 91% fuel, right? Which means you only have a small percentage of resources that you can take with you. And today, it's really all the focus on ISRU, which is the really use of resources from space. And it's in situ resources. And this is where an example of 3D printing comes in, right? We're not going to be able to take the material with us, but if we have 3D printers and we're able to use the resources that are there either on Mars in the future or maybe even on the lunar surface and be able to use those materials and turn it into a material that you can use on 3D printers, you can start to make anything. Whether it's metal or plastic, it really all depends on what is there and what they're going to find. I think this is where Perseverance, that is going to be on the ground pretty soon, in 10 days on the 18th, I believe, is going to be interesting because that's going to be on the ground and it's going to be able to take a look at what's there.
So if I can ask, just to clarify, you say if we get up to Mars, we essentially could take a bunch of 3D printers and essentially create a brand new spacecraft in order to get us back to Earth.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as spacecraft, but maybe building a habitat, building tools, building equipment that's necessary. And what's really most important, basic human life requires water, requires oxygen. And if water is there, which we see a lot of evidence of, we can break that down. There's CO2 in the atmosphere, and if you have all of those together, you can actually create fuel, you can create oxygen, you have water, and if you have those three, there's a lot that can be done, and habitat is possible.
We could just see images now on our screen. I think they're going to come up in just a moment of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. And of course, that's the control room that we can see right there. The team there, of course, monitoring very closely the route and the course of the HOPE probe over the last 7 months. Of course, deeply involved in the construction and the launch and the planning of it as well. And now, I would assume, Fahad, anxiously waiting for that signal to come through to let us know that it is in orbit around Mars. How do you think they're feeling right now?
Well, I mean, as of right now, of course, it's definitely going to be very nerve-wracking, as everybody has said already, because this is the time, I believe it was 7:42, so only 6 minutes ago, they would have started the burn. And this is expected to take up to 27 minutes. So the HOPE probe is working autonomously right now. There is very little anyone can do because the signals of having to relay anything back or any new instructions isn't really possible at this time anymore. So it's fully reliant on Hope probe itself to find its way.
Take us through the details of what the burn involves, because we were talking about the importance of bringing fuel up into space. They now have to get rid of about 50% of their fuel in order to slow down.
Yes, so you have 6 delta V thrusters, as they would call them, and this is basically changing the velocity. So they were averaging about 121,000 kilometers per hour, and that needs to be slowed down all the way to about 18,000 kilometers per hour. So during that period, there's and 27 minutes of these thrusters burning is a lot of time, and this is where the concerns are, right? There are possibilities that things could go wrong, as Francois had mentioned, right? But everybody has been doing the simulations, all the tests are there, and so hopefully we're confident and this works.
Well, when we do hopefully get that signal through, it will be to the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Centre that we go to receive the announcement. Probably one way or the other, we'll see that first here on Dubai 1. Let's hand over now to Jad, though. He's down at Burj Plaza. Jad, what do you have for us?
So Jad's on location for us this evening down at Burj Plaza. He's had some fantastic guests earlier this evening. We spoke with Sahel Al-Masroui, the UAE Minister of Energy and Infrastructure. He's going to be continuing to update us throughout this evening. Jad, can you hear us down the line? I know there's lots going on there this evening. I believe you've got another special guest for us.
Well, Jad just seems to have a little bit of a problem hearing us at the moment, but I can see he's got a guest waiting, so we will catch up with him in just a moment's time. Of course, we were just talking about the printing, the 3D printing that could potentially revolutionise the space race, if I might call it that, although it seems like it's more of a collaboration these days, not just nation against nation, it's very much a partnership. And of course, I'm assuming now that with this interest in science in the UAE and burgeoning technology development is happening in this country. So one of our universities, they could be creating the next thing which helps us to go to that next stage of space exploration. How much development is taking place in the country at the moment?
There is a lot happening. We have 5 universities right now. We have several labs that have been created. You have the NSSTC in the Al Ain, the UAE University in Al Ain. You have the acoustic lab, which is the Khalifa University lab that's also being set up right now, together with the ASAT and the UAE Space Agency also funding the projects. So there's a lot happening. You would have heard a couple of weeks ago, University of Sharjah, they had some really interesting, astronomy finds with the 2 planets there. So there is a huge wave of things that's happening here. One of the things was talked about in terms of sharing the data, right? A lot of information is actually coming out of the US and other countries because the government pays for a lot of these initiatives and for those projects. It's funded by income tax, let's say, and taxes. So it's very public and that information is open and goes out to everybody. Here in the UAE, it's not the case, but our generous leadership is opening up the information and we're going to be sharing that data.
That's amazing.
And it's really all there to open that aspect up. It's for STEM, it's for everybody to just really engage and have data to work with and drive forward in these capabilities. So technologies are definitely always in the making, right? And the challenge of going to Mars is definitely going to need new technologies, but it's not to say that those technologies will only be required for Mars. A lot of those can also be utilized here on Earth. It'll improve efficiencies, make life better in many different ways, improve the quality of life. For instance, if we want to convert the CO2 in Mars atmosphere into oxygen, this is something that's happening here today, CO2 capture, right? It's very expensive, it's very energy intensive. But now for the purposes of also going out to Mars and being able to have that technology, bringing it back to Earth would be really
fascinating, isn't it? Right, let's see if we can catch up with Jad now down at Burj Plaza. Jad, over to you. Well, we seem to have trouble.
The UAE has been glowing in red in the past few days. We saw Burj Khalifa, we saw Dubai Frame, we saw the Museum of the Future. A lot of iconic buildings have been glowing in red to support and to show that we are all proud of this amazing mission to Mars. With me right now is Noura Al-Janahi, Project Resource Manager. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling today? How are you feeling right now, especially that we will know what's going to happen in the next few minutes?
I'm very proud to be a part of this mission. I'm very proud of the achievement that we were able to make. I would like to thank the leadership for the vision they had in order for us to reach to the state we're at now.
A lot of women were involved in the success of this mission. How do you feel about that?
I'm very honored to be one of the significant females that were part of this project. As you know, there were 34% of Emiratis, female Emiratis at the project, and I think it's the highest rate within a global project, and I'm very proud to be part of that.
And tell me more about your role as a project resource manager.
The project management team was basically monitoring and tracking the budget, schedule and resources of the project. My role was to manage and monitor the human resources aspect of the project.
So I think it's time to see what's going to happen. We're both really excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Back to you guys in the studio.
And we've got a special show happening down at the Burj Khalifa. I can see that pictures are coming in right now of the world's tallest tower lighting up the Burj Khalifa this evening, displaying a united front to the world as the UAE aims to go down in history as the first Arab country sending a probe to Mars. Now, earlier this evening, we saw the Burj Khalifa light up in the leaders of the UAE faces. And we're continuing to enjoy a special light display. You can see 200 on the side of the building. That is symbolizing the 200 Emirati engineers, scientists and researchers, 409 kilometers. The journey the Hope probe has made from Earth to Mars is an incredible journey, and we'll be here tonight as we find out if the Hope probe is making it into Mars's orbit. 5.5 million hours of manpower has gone into this project, as we've just seen on the sides of the Burj Khalifa.
Remarkable sight, and this display, of course, I think it's around a 5-minute display that we're going to see here. This, of course, is happening just minutes before the earliest point at which we expect to receive that signal from the Hope probe, which I believe is around 8 minutes past 8 this evening. And of course, if we do get it at that point, that will be a very good sign, Fahad, won't it, that we are on the right course. 8:08, the signal comes through. How do we react in the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center? I'm guessing we will see a lot of very happy faces.
The signals are coming through from the Deep Space Network, so we're currently utilizing the big dishes over at Madrid. So there's a 70-meter dish and a 35-meter dish that are tracking, and as soon as that telemetry and that information comes through, it will get to the MBRSC Command and Control Center, and Imran will hopefully be giving us the news.
And it's, sorry Katie to interrupt, but it's not exactly an exact science, if I can put it like that. It could be any time between 8:08, maybe 8:12, 8:15. We're not entirely sure when we're going to get it, but we will be receiving it here first.
Yes, we do hope so. I mean, if it does get delayed, if there were any concerns or any issues during the phase of the burn, then we may have to wait until it comes back around Mars. So
well, it is 7:58, so only about 10 minutes until we get more of an idea. Now, I thought it was interesting. Earlier, we heard from some of our guests as well as you saying, even if the probe doesn't quite go to plan this evening, issues still could be rectified. Of course, we do have a bit of a delay between the probe and Mars, but as long as it doesn't crash into the Mars planet, which is a potential, it should be okay. What are some of the issues that could potentially need to be fixed? I know we mentioned earlier, you said, if a fuse catches a light. What are some of the issues that we might face and how they could be resolved?
So, as I mentioned, everything is happening autonomously right now, and there's very little we can do because the time frame really isn't there. Everything that we could have really done would have had to be done before this Mars.
Which I love, by the way, because it's kind of super cool that it's autonomous, but at the same time, it's kind of scary that we can't control it. It's all down to that programming.
But it's the programming, right? It's the simulations, and this is where things are planned, things are assumed, bad things are programmed in to say that, all right, what if this happens, and how the Mars probe should react. So it was mentioned as well, if we have one thruster go down, it'll actually shut two down because they're not centered and they're on the sides of the spacecraft. So just to keep the equilibrium, if one goes down for any reason, another goes down, and it'll still allow us to succeed in orbit insertion, but it'll take longer.
Absolutely. It is an incredible journey. We are going to be finding out in about 8 or 9 minutes whether we have the first signal from Mars. But first, let's take a look at this incredible light display on the world's tallest tower, the Burj Khalifa in downtown Dubai.
حضورنا الكريم لقد مر المسبار في عدة مراحل ولكن أصعب
going to be checking in with Her Excellency Sarah Al-Amiri in just a moment. We believe she's going to be making a big announcement on the progress of the UAE Mars mission. Well, Fahad, thank you so much for staying with us this evening. We were beginning to talk a little bit earlier about, obviously, it is an autonomous journey up there this evening. We were talking about some of the things that could go wrong, how potentially they could be fixed. There is a 50% success rate, whether the project goes ahead as planned or not. What are some of the big lessons we hope this project will bring us this far?
I mean, the journey up to this point has just been amazing for everybody. To actually have people have gone out and worked on this for the last 6 years, to have the team during the pandemic actually stay 4 months over in Japan because we couldn't rotate the team during that period due to the lockdowns. And just the success of getting the probe over to Japan at that time, past the ferry and into launch, and for the Emiratis to actually be there and experience all that, it was huge. Now this is, of course, going to be an opportunity for so many to look at and learn from, good or bad, whatever happens today. And this is history in the making at the end of the day.
What I really loved about that display we just saw was all of the facts and the details that were being projected onto the side of the Burj Khalifa there. You know, not everybody is aware of exactly what has gone into this. You know, the amazing facts that of the number of women who've been involved in this project, the fact that it's, you know, Emirati driven very much. There's collaborations with organisations all over the world, and 5.5 million hours of work has gone into this, and just the amount of knowledge that people in this country now have. And, you know, it kind of excites me to think that people who've been working on this project, Emiratis who've been working on this project, they could go and work for NASA in the States, they could go over to the UK, they could go and really lead up teams in other countries as well. This is going to have a huge wave effect.
Yes, I fully agree with that. And that's the exciting thing about this. And this is why, you know, the leadership didn't just want to do something small. They went all the way. You know, what is the hardest thing we could look at right now? And what is something that we can do to help humanity? And what is something to do that can inspire the youth, the Arab region? And you know, the Emirates Mars mission Hope probe was that. So we are here today. There's a lot happening. Still, again, if everything goes well, it's going to be an amazing opportunity with the science data that's going to come through. And this is going to be shared. A lot is going to be learned. And this could open up the way for more missions in the future. As you already know, there have been announcements by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid on the Rashid rover. So this is as well another space exploration out onto the lunar surface.
Absolutely.
So exciting times ahead.
And I think one of the big focuses, we've mentioned it a little bit, about the importance of creating a knowledge-based economy. The fact that this space information is one goal, but certainly broadening our horizons and our economy here, moving away from hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons, even tourism this year has been affected by COVID as well. Now, you've been involved in some really exciting announcements just this week. The opportunity for people to come and learn from some of the top universities in the UAE for free of charge. I'm going to ask you about that in just a moment, but first we've got some very special footage coming in live from the Burj Khalifa. Let's take a look at that on our screens. The Burj Khalifa in downtown Dubai, a very special message to the world tonight.
اتجاه المريخ تجنبا لوقوع أي حوادث من نظام الإطلاق اللي موجود حول المسبار. فيكون في عدة إجراءات تصحيحية للمسار عشان المسار اللي نحن نبغى ندخل فيه في المدار حول المريخ، وتم استخدام المحركات ولكن لبضعة ثواني ما يقارب 27 دقيقة اللي احنا ياسين نمر فيها. التغييرات اللي تستوي يتم حرق نصف كمية الوقود، ففي تغيير كبير في خزان الوقود، خاصة من جانب درجة الحرارة اللي موجودة. درجة الحرارة اللي موجودة في أجزاء مختلفة من المسبار، عشان شيء أخوي عمران يوم أعطانا الأبديت الأخير ذكر درجات الحرارة. درجات الحرارة مهمة جدا، والمسبار تم برمجتها أنه يتأكد بالحفاظ على الحرارة المناسبة للإلكترونيات اللي موجودة على متن المسبار، وأيضا على الأجهزة العلمية اللي موجودة على المسبار. ففي عدة عوامل تدخل في موضوع الدخول. نحن جربناه بأكثر قدر نقدر نجربه في الأرض، وتم وضع عدة سيناريوهات للتجريب نجاوب مع التجارب اللي موجودة، ويمكن التجربة الأخيرة نتائجها خلال الدقائق الجاية
إن شاء الله بإذن الله.
This evening in order to make sure that they can enter Mars's orbit. Now, as we heard earlier, our guest Fahad mentioned the fact that 91% of the weight on board these kinds of projects is made up of fuel. So this is a really important part, because in order to be able to lift off out of Earth's gravity, the Hope probe had to be able to travel at an incredible speed with a lot of fuel, but now is the time to slow down. So she's now explaining how they can find the location of the probe and really locate where it is. Earlier this evening we heard why the Hope probe was using star tracking equipment in order to keep it on track. And now we're trying to understand just where the Hope probe is at the moment. It is 8:07 this evening. We are expecting it could be as early as 8:08. We do get a signal from the Hope probe that they have entered Mars's orbit, a pivotal moment in history, not only for the UAE, but the entire world.
And of course, this message now not just being delivered to us, to you here in the UAE and of course the wider region, but to people all around the world and the world's press as well. I was looking a little bit earlier before we came on air, and I was looking at the number of cameras, the amount that are at this event today, and there are dozens and dozens down there. And this is very much going to be a message that's shared across the world. Her Excellency Sarah Al-Amiri, of course, explaining all the details, not just to the dignitaries there and to the people that have been involved.
And Her Excellency has really been the face of this mission. We mentioned earlier how 80% of the Emirati science involved in this project are women. 30% of the entire team are women. The average age of people involved in this project was just 27. Now, Her Excellency herself is in her early 30s as well. It really is an incredible moment for UAE women and the country as a whole.
Her Excellency, of course, just talking about the fact that the further the probe travels away from the Earth, away from the control centre, the longer it takes for signals from the control centre to go to the probe, and of course signals to come back from the probe to Earth. And of course those signals are what we depend on to know that the probe is headed in the right direction. And so far we've had good news throughout the probe's journey over the last 7 months or so, just under 7 months. And of course now it enters that stage where it's just dependent upon itself, dependent upon its programming in order to achieve orbit around Mars. Prior to this point, it was guiding itself by its own star map within its own programming. We're going to go over now to the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center for a special announcement.
من قائد المهمة إلى جميع الفرق على الجميع الاستعداد لإجراء التقييم النهائي لصحة المسبار. أكرر على الجميع الاستعداد لإجراء التقييم النهائي لصحة المسبار.
شكرا لقائد المهمة. بعدنا نرتقب الأخبار من الخوانيج، فسامحين على المقاطعة معليش، فإذا نرجع لسؤال التواصل مع المسبار والبنية التحتية اللازمة.
المحطة الأرضية اللي شفناها حاليا تتلقى الإشارات من عند المسبار ويتم ترجمتها في الأجهزة اللي موجودة من قدام الشباب، إن كان في غرفة التحكم، ورا تشوفون شباب ياسين، هذه غرفة الهندسة المهندسين ياسين فيه.
The report will be coming in about 4 minutes. It is 8:10 in this evening. We knew we'd be able to get the signal as early as 8:08.
And you can see there, Katie, the countdown on the wall of the control centre, counting down 3 minutes and around 25 seconds, I believe, if my eyesight doesn't fail me. And that's the timeline. That's what they're looking at now to receive that signal from the Hope probe. Hopefully, good news will be received.
And it is incredible to think about this journey. The fact that, 50 years ago, the UAE was desert. We know that the United Arab Emirates will be celebrating its 50th anniversary of the formation of the 7 Emirates a little bit later this year. And to consider to be able to move from desert to Mars within just 50 years really is quite remarkable. Something no other country around the world has done before. And you can really feel the excitement. I think in the studio downtown at Dubai is palpable. I mean, Ray, you and I are expatriates. You've been here about 11 years. I've been here about 12 years. And to be announced 6 years ago that there were plans to send a mission to Mars, and then to be here tonight, watch it happen in front of the world's eyes, really is quite remarkable. You can see the brightest minds and experts of the UAE are in the control room there at the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, waiting any minute to find out if the UAE has made history.
Yeah, I believe it's just under around 2.5 minutes we have to wait, hopefully for that good news. The team there, you can see, looking quite anxious, but in control, very much in control. They've been preparing for this. This has been planned. And we're waiting to see if the probe has entered Mars's orbit. And of course, a lot of communication going on at this stage. Even if we do receive good news tonight, which we hope that we do, there will be a period of around about two weeks plus where we just are going to be seeing if everything is still going according to plan, if the orbit is correct, and if everything that's on board the Hope probe is working. All those so vital scientific instruments with each of their key jobs to study the Martian atmosphere in their own unique way.
And even after that goes ahead, it will be a few months until the probe begins collecting that important science data that we've been talking about throughout this evening. The information is going to be bringing this data over the next 2 years. Then the project could actually be extended for another 2 years as well. And the questions it's going to help us answer is going to give us a better understanding of the climate here on Earth. We can see there is cheering, there's celebration.
That says it all. There is jubilation among the team down there at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Centre. They've received the good news. The Hope probe is in orbit around Mars.
The UAE has officially made history as only the 5th country in the world to reach the red planet. We mentioned the fact of millions of manpower hours involved, an incredible journey. Fahad, how are you feeling right now? What a moment.
The hairs at the back of my neck are standing up. I've got goosebumps. What an amazing achievement.
Now, we're going to be going live for a special announcement direct from the centre.
الحمد لله.
قائد الفريق عمران، شرف ولحظة تاريخية للإمارات وللوطن العربي.
معريج، فهذه كما ذكرتم أصعب مرحلة، وطينا هذه المرحلة بنجاح. المهمات لكوكب المريخ أخرى تصل الأسبوع هذا إلى كوكب المريخ.
في مهمتين غير.
Fahad Al-Mahiri is continuing to stay with us. So I have to say there was excitement around in the studio. I think pre-COVID there might have been some high fives. We're going to celebrate from a distance. How are you feeling right now?
It's amazing, unbelievable. I'm so proud of the team. I'm so happy for the UAE, so happy and just for the world, really. This has been such everybody.
Okay, be honest. Did it really happen? I mean, I know we've hoped.
Okay, we're going to go direct to pictures from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. UAE Vice President, Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai is at this space centre right now. It must be an incredible moment for His Highness to see his dreams come to fruition.
الإمارات يتخطى حدود الأرض وربما يصل إلى عنان السماء، وهذا ليس كلاما خطه القلم فحسب، بل إنما مثلما نشاهده الآن وصول الإشارة من قبل مسبار الأمل.
وصول مسبار الأمل إلى مدار الالتقاط الأول هو إنجاز لكافة الأمة العربية والإسلامية. سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم يقف الآن في مركز محمد بن راشد للفضاء ليهنئ فرق العمل.
أنتوا علينا، مبروكين أنتوا على شعب الإمارات، مبروكين على أمتنا العربية اللي حققتوه شرف لكم ولأهلكم ولبلادكم ولأمتكم. شيء ثاني، أريد أبارك لمعزبنا وشيخنا سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ خليفة بن زايد، وللمعزب وتاج راسي أبو راشد اللي كان الدينامو الرئيسي وراء هذا الحدث. أبارك لحكام دولة الإمارات، أبارك لشعب دولة الإمارات الوفي المخلص اللي اليوم فرحته ما توصف. أنتم السبب بعد توفيق رب العالمين. ما ننسى صورة الشيخ زايد، تاريخ يذكرنا به اليوم. سنة الحياة يا عيالي، جيل يسلم الراية الجيل والحياة تمشي. هو بداها وانتم وصلتوا. الحمد لله. الحمد لله. مشكورين على المجهود، مشكورين على المستوى، مشكورين على التشريف اللي شرفتونا به. رفعتوا راية بلادكم وسمعتها في المريخ. حفظكم ربي، جيل يشرف، ومبروكين مرة ثانية انتوا على بلادكم. سعدنا بشوفكم، فرحتنا كبيرة. حفظكم ربي. الحمد لله، الحمد لله، الحمد لله. تفضل بالعذر بس الضربة الثانية. عمران.
إذا رسميا الإمارات أول دولة عربية وخامس دولة في العالم العربي تصل إلى المريخ. نبارك لقيادة الإمارات وشعب الإمارات وشعوب الوطن العربي هذا الإنجاز التاريخي، ونعد العالم بالمزيد من الإنجازات التي نضعها في خدمة الإنسان والإنسانية.
شكرا لفريق مسبار الأمل ضمن مشروع الإمارات لاستكشاف المريخ، والشكر الأكبر.
مثلما سمعنا قبل قليل صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان يهنئ فريق العمل وأيضا يهنئ شعب الإمارات والكل من شارك في نجاح هذه المهمة. مسبار الأمل مفخرة جديدة تضاف إلى سجل زاخرة التفاخر.
So we're just hearing the UAE leaders have talked about the fact that Sheikh Zayed's goals, his vision, have really come to fruition. His incredibly ambitious vision, not just I think here for the UAE, but the message this sends to the Arab world of just what is possible. We saw the journey from people like Hazza Al-Mansouri, inspiring young children of what they can grow up to be. University students, we've seen a 12% increase in STEM education over the last few years, particularly which has been really increased since we've seen some major space projects come out of the UAE, particularly in women. We're seeing a really big uptake in STEM subjects being studied at university today. This is more than just a single project. It's going to lay the foundation for the UAE's extremely ambitious goal of putting the first human settlement on Mars by 2117. You can see the country's leaders coming together for a photo to celebrate this incredible milestone for the UAE ahead of its 50th anniversary of the formation of the Emirates. What a special night.
What an incredible moment for the team here, and obviously getting that news that the Hope of Mars, and then being congratulated by the leaders of the UAE, the united leaders of the UAE there, of course, just united in their joy and their praise for the team and their incredible achievement, the vision of the late Sheikh Zayed. After all of these years, it's been achieved today by the UAE, and it is just an incredible moment for her.
It is. I mean, it's such an honor to have the leadership be there as well at such a moment. You know, the efforts that the team have been putting in and the time that they've been putting in, and to now hear this news and for the leadership to be there, you know, to do this is just amazing. I'm sure each and every single one of them are never going to forget this.
Well, of course, mankind has always been obsessed with space. Learning more about other planets gives scientists on Earth a better understanding of our own atmosphere.
Oh, that's right, but there's always been a special interest in Mars. The two planets, Earth and Mars, share quite a similar length of day and seasons, but differ in many other ways. So my old friend Ray Addison went to find out a little bit more about what makes these two planets spin.
Why is the human race so driven to explore Mars? The motives are vast, including a desire to understand the conditions and climatic changes that have led to the erosion of the red planet's atmosphere. Great reasons, but why Mars in particular, and why not any other planet in our solar system? Well, that's because Mars and Earth are actually twins, with many similarities between them. The first of which is their geographical configuration. The two planets have the same area of land, despite the fact that the diameter of Mars is only slightly larger than the radius of the Earth. The geography of Mars is also similar to Earth's, with high mountains and valleys. However, Mars has the highest mountain peak in the solar system. The massive Olympus Mons towers approximately 25 kilometers above the surface of the red planet. Earth has the second highest peak in the solar system, but Mount Everest is a tiddler in comparison at just 8.8 kilometers above sea level. Mars is also home to the massive Mariner Valley at 4,000 kilometres long, 200 kilometres wide and 10,000 kilometres deep. It's one of the largest canyons in our solar system. It makes the deepest gully on Earth, the Yarlung Valley, look like a mere ditch at 500 kilometres long and 6 kilometres deep. And by the way, Americans, it also dwarfs your famous Grand Canyon, which is just 1.6 kilometres deep and 450 kilometres long. Both planets, Earth and Mars, have two permanent polar ice caps. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter discovered that fact in 2019. Now, back then, it found ice sheets accumulating over the planet's polar soil and extending 1 mile below the surface. In fact, the total volume of ice in Mars's poles is estimated at 3.2 million cubic kilometres. That's larger than all the ice in Greenland, which stands at 2.85 million. Well, do you want more similarities? Well, planet Earth and Mars both rotate around the Sun on a very similar tilt, which gives both planets 4 seasons. The difference is that Earth's seasons are distributed over 365 days, while on Mars they're spread over 687 days. Mars and Earth also have a similar day and night cycle. In fact, the length of a day on the red planet is just a tiny bit more than ours, at 24 hours and 39 minutes. Both planets have sunrises and sunsets. However, they are a very different colour. The fine dust in the Earth's atmosphere scatters the blues and greens coming from the sun to give us yellow, orange and red colours. On Mars, the fine dust that is constantly around its atmosphere absorbs the blue light from the sun and scatters the warm colours, making its sky more red in colour. On the other hand, dust particles on the horizon scatter the blue light, creating a blue halo effect. And if you've ever wondered what the sunlight looks like on Mars, well, it's equivalent to a partly cloudy afternoon on a regular Earth day. Not many of those here in Dubai. Well, if you just joined us tonight, where have you been? We've just had the amazing news that the Hope probe, the Emirates Mars mission, has been successful. It is now in orbit around the red planet. That makes us the first Arab country to achieve that amazing, incredible feat, and just the 5th country internationally. So we're going to take a quick break, but loads more still to come. We're going to talk about the financial impact that this achievement will have, not just on the UAE, but on the region. And we'll catch up with Jad down at Burj Plaza as well. So stay tuned.
Jackson.
Lisa, so what do you do?
As fate would have it, my business is all about you.
I'm not sure where you're going with this.
J.R. Joe Reisert. Your father?
Where did you get that?
Grabbed it off your dad's desk next to your graduation picture. You tell the flight attendant and your dad dies.
What can I do for you?
She's just had a really rough day. A death in the family.
Why are you doing this?
Somebody wants to send a big brash message. Do Dad a favor and stop gambling with his life.
Red Eye, Friday, 10 p.m. UAE, 6 p.m. GMT. On Dubai 1. This movie is brought to you by
الخير هو اختيار لواكر منبع الخير.
At the beginning of the 20th century, a mother dreams of marrying her 5 daughters to eligible bachelors. But marriage is not a priority in Elisabetta Benedito's life. Inspired by the work of Jane Austen comes this romantic period series. It is Austen like we've never seen. Pride and Passion. Tonight, 9 p.m. UAE, 5 p.m. GMT. On Dubai 1.
program is brought to you by
the Iron Rose.
Welcome back. You are watching Dubai One's special live coverage of the Emirates mission to Mars. And what an incredible night so far. If you have just joined us, the UAE has gone down in history as only the first Arab country to ever reach Mars and the fifth in the world to reach the red planet. It has been wonderful to be a part of this journey and to watch the UAE leaders being able to celebrate at the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Space Centre, where we got the information only around maybe 5 or 7 minutes ago that the Hope probe was officially a success. Well, our next guest, you can see live pictures coming in there. Our next guest we're going to be speaking to in just a moment. Dr. Mike Kelly joined the Planetary Science Division at NASA headquarters in 2008. And today he serves as the program scientist for the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, Mars Odyssey, Janus and NEO-WISE missions. He joins us now from Washington. Mike, thank you so much for being with us on such a special night. Now, you have been there at moments like this throughout your career. Just how special is this? What kind of thoughts will be going through the team at the Space Centre's headquarters this evening? Can you hear us? Well, we seem to be having a few technical delays, so we'll come back to Mike Kelly in just a moment.
Interesting to see there, though, Katie. Just a moment ago, we could see the some of the hugely well-known buildings across the UAE lit up red, international buildings as well, lighting up red in recognition of this amazing achievement of the UAE, just the first Arab country and, of course, the fifth internationally to reach Mars with a probe, a successful mission on our very first attempt as well. It's a remarkable achievement. You can see there pictures of the Burj Khalifa, of course, lighting up in celebration. That's, of course, what the Burj Khalifa is known for. It's known for its light shows, it's known for its fireworks shows, and of course thousands of people down there at the Burj Plaza as well, celebrating and rejoicing with this amazing news, which is spreading not just across the UAE now, but across the region and the wider world. The news that everybody will be seeing tomorrow in their newspapers, on their television sets, that the UAE has reached Mars with the Hope probe on its very first attempt.
Absolutely. We are watching live pictures coming in of some major landmarks across the country. I have to say, each evening driving home on Sheikh Zayed Road, I've been enjoying seeing the Museum of the Future lit up in red as well. Just a few minutes ago, we saw the Burj Al Arab lit up in red. There is the Burj Khalifa, and it is wonderful being able to see the entire country being able to join together on such an incredible achievement. Well, we're going to be coming back to our special guest live from NASA moment. But first, the UAE's mission to Mars has some big goals, but environmental research is only part of it. The country wants to use it to transform global science and the economy, as well as the UAE space sector, and encourage a new generation of Emirati space scientists to take up STEM studies. Joining us in the studio live to discuss what lies ahead is HSBC's Regional Head of Commercial Banking for the MENA region and Turkey. It is Daniel Howlett. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us this evening. What a night. I know you've been watching the pictures that come in live. Again, we can see the Burj Khalifa lit up there. Well, I guess I want to begin by asking you, obviously we've seen low oil prices recently. We've even seen tourism take a hit, not just, UAE regionally, internationally as well. So how important has this mission diversify away from high and really invest in a more tech-focused, knowledge-based economy?
Well, I think it's sort of hugely significant for the UAE. You've talked already about it being only the fifth nation to reach. Actually look at this in economic terms. I mean, they've spent about $6 billion on the program itself. That's already created 57 different space-related businesses and about 1,500 jobs. But in a global context, you've got an industry that generates around about $450 billion a year. And by 2040, Morgan Stanley estimate it'll be $1 trillion. So for the UAE to have a key role to play in space-related activity going forward in the region, I think is hugely significant. And then alongside that, if you think about the broader economic drivers for the Middle East and for the UAE, I think this positions the UAE from a science and innovation perspective. It transforms the economy from where it's been historically in oil and gas and tourism and travel.
How big is that impact going to be on jobs and how jobs change in this country from now on? Are we going to see a much bigger focus on tech jobs, on research and development as well? Are we going to see people coming over here to sort of take advantage of all of the university courses that have been created to sort of cater for this increased demand as well?
Well, I think that's a great question. So, candidly, I think it already is happening. If you look at the way in which the UAE has evolved over the last 50 years, it's been transformed. So if you look at Dubai today, 50 years ago, 50% of its GDP was from oil, and now it's 1%. We all know about how important it is from an international travel hub, particularly with the airports. But alongside that, people forget it's in the top 10 ports in the world already. So in education terms, I think the UAE will become a global hub, particularly for Africa in the region, for education, and we're seeing this with education technology as well as with different courses, as you described, for space and related technology.
Daniel, stick around if you don't mind. There's still lots more to talk to you about now, though. We just want to turn our attention now to Mike Kelly. He is, of course, a scientist at NASA Planetary Science Division, and he joins us now all the way from Washington. Mike, are you there?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm just gonna wait for a few more minutes and see if anyone else would like to join. Welcome everyone to the RU session. I'm just going to give it one more minute before I start. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. And Abdullah, if you could just let me know if you're able to see my presentation.
Yeah, you're good, Moser.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, welcome everyone to the RU session. My name is Moser Sharif. I'm the Science Initiatives Coordinator. And in this presentation, we'll be talking about the Research Experience for Undergraduates program. As you might have seen already, we've announced the program that will be taking place in the summer of 2021. So just before we go ahead and start with the session, it's very brief. So first, we will be talking about the introduction to MBRC in brief terms. Then we will move on to the Emirates Mars mission very briefly as well. And then we will talk in detail about the RU program. Just to clarify, there is a question and answer box at the bottom of your screen, where if you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them there, and I'll be sure to check them by the end of the session, and I will address each question as we go. We have up until 1 p.m. So I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And if we do not get the chance to answer your questions, I will refer you to an email address that you can contact us through, and we will answer any of your questions there. Also, just to note, this session will be recorded, so you will have access to this at a later stage if you have anything else that you would want to clarify. One final detail is that we will be running this same session on Sunday, December 20, from 12 to 1 as well. So if anyone would like to attend this again or share this session to any of their friends or any of their colleagues that they would be interested in this program, please feel free to share this with them as well. And we will be announcing that on our social medias as well. So without further ado, I'm going to just give a brief introduction to MBRC. First of all, hold on. The session was known as the Emirates Institution for Advanced Science and Technology, which was established in February 2006. And then it has, on April 18, 2015, a decree has been issued to incorporate EAST as the newly established center known as the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. The vision and mission of the center, first of all, we'll tap onto the vision, is to be recognized globally as a center of excellence in the field of space science and technological innovation. As for the vision, or as for the mission, sorry, is to enable the UAE to effectively create, use, and exploit space science technologies and applications. So this is just a brief vision and mission of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. The main sectors of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center is space operations management. So you would see this through the ground station and satellite mission planning, as well as space exploration. You would see this through, for example, the Emirates Mars mission Hope probe to Mars. As well as the research, development, and innovation, so things that include NIF1 and NSOP, the remote sensing application competition as well, and as well as other analysis reports, which include change detection, vegetation, and water quality, to provide other entities as well with details that they might have a use of within their own plans. Other than that, we have the space systems development as well, such as Dubai Sat 1 and 2 and Khalifa Sat as well. So this is just a brief on the main sectors of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. But targeting the RU program, which mainly falls under the Emirates Mars mission, I'll just give a brief on the Emirates Mars mission, which is that the UAE Space Agency and MBRC signed an agreement on October 20, 2014 to build the first Arab Mars space probe, which is known as the Emirates Mars mission Hope probe. And the objectives of the Emirates Mars mission is to complete Mars orbit insertion by the UAE's 50th anniversary in 2021. And to contribute to the development of the SNT sector, which is the science and technology sector in the UAE, and to develop the UAE scientific capabilities. So we do this mainly through the programs that we offer students, professors, researchers, and more, and to increase the UAE's contribution to the scientific community as well. So what will EMM do? We've hyped this up through social medias and everywhere, but just to clarify, the Emirates Mars mission is a mission that's focused on atmospheric dynamics, and it will explore the atmosphere of Mars globally while sampling both diurnal and seasonal timescales. So why do we do things such as the RU program, and other than that, we do other workshops, events, webinars, and other programs as well that's tailored to students as well as professors and researchers. So we would say, what is the importance of science outreach? Is to basically stimulate the students, faculty, and researchers in the UAE to be engaged in the space science and research field, since our main target is to increase this kind of contribution, and to also develop the students' capabilities and research skills, since we want to involve them in this kind of future as well, and to provide interactive platforms and opportunities to enrich the UAE community with the knowledge of space science, and to involve them as well in the mission. So as mentioned, I won't be going to each program in detail, but we have things such as the RU program, the Explore Mars competition, the annual science workshop, the research grants program, and other than that, workshops, webinars, and camps as well. You will be able to see any announcements with regards to any of those programs in our social medias, whether it's the MBRC page or the Emirates Mars mission, Hope Mars mission page on social media as well. But for this presentation, we'll be talking about the RU program, the one that's highlighted on the far left. So what is the RU program? It's known as the Research Experience for Undergraduates program. The purpose is to stimulate students' interest in space science and research fields. And the target is for Emirati undergraduates under science and engineering majors who are either sophomores, juniors, and seniors that are not graduating in the fall of 2021. So this is basically for the next batch of the RU program. So what is the description of what is the RU program in specific detail? It's an international internship opportunity. So the students who get accepted into the RU program can have their program take place in various locations, which I will be sharing in the next slide. And it takes place during the summer for 8 to 10 weeks. And students are mentored by the Emirates Mars Mission Science Team or by international scientists, depending on where they will be located for the RU program. And they will be working on space science research projects. And from these projects, they will come up with certain results and findings that they can also showcase in through scientific publications in internationally known conferences, whether they are local or international conferences. So these are the RU program locations. The students who are accepted can have their RU program take place in either the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center or the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics in the University of Colorado in Boulder, or the Space Sciences Lab in the University of California, Berkeley, or in Northern Arizona University. So basically those are the partners in the United States. And then we have LMD, which is in Sorbonne University in France. And we recently had United Arab Emirates University in Al Ain take part in the RU program as a partner, where the National Space Science and Technology Center will be hosting 1 or 2 students for the next summer. So these are basically the RU program locations, and hopefully within the next coming years, we will try to add as many partners in which we will be able to accommodate more students to take part in the RU program. So what are the expectations of students who are accepted in the RU program? One is to have the students attend a boot camp. The name doesn't sound as intense as it is, but it's a 3-day kind of camp where students will be provided with a solid foundation in space science and research. So once they do get exposed to the research that they are conducting during the RU program, they are not surprised and they are familiar with the terms that we use through this camp. So it's kind of a solid foundation that is provided to the students before they before they begin with their RU program. Second is that they are present on all days of the RU program, unless the university or the lab is closed. And if in any case, if there's any official holiday or if any students request an emergency or medical leave. The thing is, I do understand that many students as of now are probably wondering that since there are terms of lockdown and Corona happening right now, and I will be talking about this at the end, but this we can overcome this issue by having things done virtually as well. But you'll be working with the same partners. So other than that, because we need to follow up with the students and their progress, students will be requested to share their bi-weekly progress report to MBRC to just showcase the work that they have done and share any concerns that they might be having throughout the program, and to be fully invested in the task assigned and work for 40 hours per week, which is basically a good time to ensure that students do achieve each milestone set for them in order to reach to publishable results that they can showcase later on. And also they will utilize heavily their programming skills in their assigned tasks. So we normally tend to familiarize students with the Python programming language. However, each mentor might request a student to work with their specific programming language of their own, but at least having a student to be familiar with one programming language can easily, I wouldn't say easily, but at least allow them to be familiar with certain terms found in programming. And another expectation is that the student will become an integrated member of the team and actively work with their mentors. So students tend to be involved in meetings, whether they are updates or something related to their research projects as well. And they would actively work with their mentors to achieve each milestone set for them. And they would prepare presentations, scientific papers, and posters as requested by the mentors. This doesn't apply to anything that is shared in the conferences that I've mentioned, but this is mainly for if it's mainly for the mentor himself, or if it's for a group of students, because in some cases we do have students that work with other students as well, whether they are Emirati, where they will be presenting their work or will be working with other groups of students, and to represent their country and culture in a positive manner wherever they may go for the RU program. And to finally prepare a presentation for the EMM science team when their RU program has concluded. We usually request the students prepare a presentation that they would share to the Emirates Mars Mission Science team, since mentors might not be of the Emirates Mars Mission Science team and would be of international scientists. So what are the benefits of joining the program? Before I move on, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so the benefits of joining the program is that distinguished students would potentially be offered a full-time scholarship to pursue an advanced degree in science or engineering field. Other than that, distinguished students could also be offered the opportunity to directly join the Emirates Mars Mission Science team on a full-time basis as well. So we do have a student that is pursuing a full-time scholarship who was part of the RU program. Her name is Noura Saeed, and she is currently working on her PhD. Another thing is that one distinguished student who is currently working under the Emirates Mars Mission Science team is someone called Noor Al-Meheri, and she was a RU student back in 2017. Other than that, the work that is conducted in the RU program can be used as an initial step for a senior thesis project in wherever your home university may be. And finally, this internship opportunity would be a good prerequisite for any graduate level science or engineering program that the student might apply to in the future as well. So this would be a really good foundation to solidify your understanding of space science and research. So what are some of the outcomes of the program? One is that since 2015, the RU program had witnessed a lot of success stories from the students that have been accepted. And one is that students get to present in different scientific meetings where they would participate in. When I refer to scientific meetings, I wouldn't only highlight conferences, as I've mentioned. Whenever there are certain events where we expect a lot of professors to join, a lot of other students to join, students get the chance to participate in those where they would present the research that they worked on there and get feedback from other professors. And as mentioned, students get to present their scientific publications in conferences, whether it is through oral presentations or posters. And we would normally get the students to actually attend those conferences and get to communicate with other members of the UAE science community and international as well. Also, speaking of the graduate degree, we want to ensure that the students develop their skills. So you would have students who were basically this RU program was eye-opening to them, and they pursued a graduate degree, whether it was in planetary science, in physics, or astronomy, or in any degree that would fall along the lines. And last but not least, we ensure that the RU program equips students with the knowledge that they might need in order for them to understand how to handle scientific data from other scientific missions, so that they can actually be involved in EMM to conduct these scientific research when using EMM data. So here's just some statistics to share with you. Throughout the years of the RU program since 2015, we've had a total of 31 students that took part in the RU program. You might assume that it's kind of like a limited number of students, but because of the number of mentors who are willing to accept students to take part of the program, that's why we have certain limitations when it comes to students, which is also why we try as best as we can to include more partners in the RU program so that we can involve more students. And this year was the first year that we've tried to conduct the RU program virtually, which is why we expected the least amount of students to take place that we were able to host, because of the time differences we were experiencing, as well as a lot of students expected to have a more face-to-face interaction with their mentors. So at least 2 students out of the batch that we originally planned to have accepted being part of a virtual RU program. Other than that, from those 31 students, we've had a total of 21 publications that have been submitted to international conferences as well. So when it comes to trip preparation, and here's where I'm going to highlight what will happen if by the time comes of the summer of 2021, if Corona is still alive with us. So when it comes to the trip preparation, normally we would organize for the students to actually travel to either the US or France, which is where our partners are located internationally. And we would encourage the students to either book the flights themselves, or we would do it for them, where we would book the flights for the students to go to these certain places. Other than that, housing is provided as well for the students, whether it is in the USA or France. Just like the flight details, we could either have students book their own accommodation or request MBRC to do that for them. Female students are allowed to take one companion only, which will be sponsored by MBRC. However, if someone decides to have, let's say if a female student decides to have more than one companion go on with their RU trip, this companion would not be sponsored by MBRC to go with them. We're only allowed to sponsor one per female student. Unfortunately, that does not apply to the male students. And finally, the students would acquire a US visa if they are going to participate in the RU program in the United States. Okay, so as mentioned, the RU program has been announced, and if you're interested in participating in something like this, the deadline is the deadline to register would be on January 3rd, 2021. And if you do have any inquiries, you can send it through to ru@mbrc.ae. So just to showcase this to everyone, how to apply, you should just visit the EmiratesMarsMission.ae website, and then you would click on the Generation Hope tab at the top. You would find it in the kind of like top right side, and then you would see a tab, a button for the Research Experience for Undergraduates program, and you would be able to view all the details of the program over there. In the case that you do have a question that you that is not addressed anywhere on the page, you can send us an email on the link shared on the email shared on this slide below. So it's just ru@mbrc.ae, and I will be sharing this with you in the chat box by the end of my presentation. And basically, once you scroll down to the bottom, you will be able to see the registration box, where you would be filling out details to the registration form. But just a heads up, there are certain things that are required for the student to fill out, whether there is a certain personal statements, details about themselves, as well as certain documents that they would need to submit, including their CV, Emirates ID, passport, transcript, and recommendation letters from their professors. So these will be shared in as attachments as well. So yeah, basically that is it from my end. Now I'm going to leave it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, these are the things that I've mentioned earlier when it comes to the submission guidelines. These are the documents that you would need to apply for the RU program, and they will be shown in tabs as well in the registration form, where you would need to upload these documents. And now I'm going to leave you with Abdullah, who is going to share with you his experience in the RU program as well. Just hold on, let me stop sharing my screen. You can go ahead, Abdullah.
All right, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for coming. I don't have any good slides like Moza prepared for you, so you'd have to bear with me through this. So I'm going to be talking to you today about my RU experience. First of all, my name is Abdullah Amri, and let me see if this is working over here. So I go to the University of Colorado Boulder here. I do aerospace engineering and mathematics, applied mathematics, and this is the beautiful city of Boulder, Colorado. But you know, I do aerospace, so I'm a space nerd, just like all of you here. And I'm gonna start with my research first, so I can get out of the way. Then I can talk about my RU experience. My research essentially was about Mars. Mars is a big thing since a long time, really. On the right here, you can see, I think a book cover for H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds, which first imagined like aliens from Mars raiding us. And in the middle, obviously, you can see the Hope probe, and there's also the E-2117 sitting on Mars. And the big idea out of this is that Mars is a big thing. Everyone is focusing on Mars now. And my research essentially studied the atmosphere on Mars. We use data from MAVEN. MAVEN is a mission run by CU and BLAST. BLAST was the Laboratory of Atmospheric and Space Physics, which is one of the partners that Hanna-Barashi Space Center partners with. And I did my research there. So what we did throughout my research, that we were studying the atmosphere of Mars. And as you may know, you may not know, that the atmosphere of Mars has been evaporating essentially, in a sense, for a long time. And what we did, that we studied how this atmosphere started to evaporate essentially by making 2D maps. That's what you see here, 2D maps of the atmosphere of Mars. So I'm gonna save you from the trouble of trying to explain all of that to you, because it can't fit in 10 minutes. What I'm gonna talk to you about is my RU experience. And essentially what I wanna get to you is that the RU experience is something that goes, at least for me, it goes beyond research, because you're just there with a lot of interesting people and really interesting mentors and well-established scientists and interesting students, that you learn so much beyond your research. And you know, for me personally, I am still in touch with a lot of the students that I've met in my RU program. There are a lot of smart students, and they're just like have really interesting characters that you can learn from a lot. And a lot of the students that I know keep coming back and working the research, and it develops a lot of area of interest for them, and you know, exposes them to stuff that they know or they didn't know that they care about, and also opens you to connections with the Space Center and the UAE, right? Because the whole reason I'm talking to you here today is because I did the RU, and you know, I had some people in the Hanna-Barashi Space Center talk to me about it. So it's just a win-win in all situations, essentially. The second sort of thing that goes beyond research with respect to is your communication skills. And you might think that you might have a communication skills, but it's really different when you have to communicate something that's really specific and technical to people who might not have spent a lot of time on that thing as much as you did. So it develops in you that sense of communication skill that you have to communicate your results and findings with people who have never seen the thing that you've worked on. And so you learn how to speak essentially on different levels to different people. And, you know, however you did that in a poster or a paper. And you also get the benefit side of the technical skills that you get from the program, because you'd be doing some really technical research work, right? Because, you know, for me, it was a lot of data analysis and figuring out how did the engineers do their work. And so there's this aspect of the technical skill. And also you build your resume, and, you know, research, you're really trying to get a research experience in some really esteemed institutions, right? So that means that in your resume that looks really good, because even in, like, for someone who's an undergrad or still going to college, to have this like really rich research experience is something that a lot of people do not have access to, and a lot of people would kill for, right? So you're being offered that opportunity, which is something that's tremendous if you give it enough thought. And if you're really planning to go to grad school, it's just something fantastic for you, because the first thing that grad school looks for is your research experience. How much research did you do? What kind of research did you do? And why do you want to join their program? So you're being offered that opportunity early on in your career, so you can really just cement your resume essentially, in a sense. And this is not something a lot of people can do. Like, not a lot of people can go to the University of Colorado Boulder or any of the esteemed institutions that the Space Center partners with. And the opportunity that you're being offered actually is not something typical. It's really something new, because you go to that place that that's completely alien to you, to your culture, and you're submerged there with people that you don't know, and you have to figure your way out through it. And it really makes you grow out a lot. So that's why I would say in the beginning, it's something that goes beyond research, essentially. That's really all I had today. So I'm cutting short. I'll leave it to you guys if you have any questions.
Open the floor for Ahmed Al-Hantoubi to share with you his experience in the RU program, and to also give you a brief on the work that he has done as part of the RU program as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen for you, Ahmed, to share yours. And just before Ahmed starts, I just want to mention, if anyone does have anything, please do share them in the Q&A, and we will be answering them by the end of the presentation.
I think I need to share after I open the camera. Hi everyone, my name is Ahmed Al-Hantoubi, and I'll be discussing with you today my RU experience. As Moza mentioned, I've been lucky enough to conduct the experience both virtually and in person as part of the collaboration between the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center and the Northern Arizona University. The title of my project was to investigate the crustal magnetic anomalies on Mars. I won't dig deep into the details of my project, as I'm sure that all students, like every single student, gets a different topic each year. So you would care more about what happens during the program rather than the details of my project. To start off, I'd like to take you through like a timeline, what happens from the start of the program till the end, and some of the principles I think are key. Once you get accepted, 2 weeks before you actually start the program, you get briefed on what your research topic is going to be about. In my case, it was the magnetic field. So I got an email saying that you'd be researching the magnetic field. Like, it wasn't specific, but it gave me some sort of an idea of where should I start reading, or where should I start building my background information. Because when you start the RU program, you literally have no clue what research topic you'll be given. And in most cases, you would know nothing about this topic specifically. However, once you start the program, like once you get sent to the actual location, it was me and one other student from the Emirates and the 10 other RU students that are participating as part of the US RU program. What happens is that we all meet, like we're a group of students, we all report on a weekly basis, like we all meet together and we all discuss progress. You get assigned to a specific mentor, like you'll be working one-on-one with your mentor. For the first 2 weeks, it's mainly reading. In my case, I thought this reading was like taking time of the program, that it shouldn't be, like we should start doing the research. However, when we start like moving forward with the program, I realized that the reading was actually like the most important part, because I got to understand more about the concepts. And I think that's the whole fun of the RU program, that you see yourself grow from literally knowing nothing about the research topic at the start and ending up with a research paper where you're actually explaining something that hasn't been discovered or explained by any other scientist around the world. Throughout those first 2 weeks, it would mainly be like you reading research papers and asking questions, reading research paper and asking questions. The mentors are very friendly. They're there to help you, and they don't expect you to like know everything about the research topic. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Like whenever I had a question, I would go and I would ask it, whether I felt it was stupid or it was difficult. It helped me understand more about the program. After you get through the hurdle of understanding the concepts of the research topic which you're going to be studying, it gets to the programming part, where you start to put the science, like you link the engineering and the science together. I feel like those two aspects go hand in hand, where we started to like make some codes that would help us investigate the thesis, the question, the research topic which we're trying to do. And in our case, we were like investigating correlations of the magnetic anomalies and other parameters. So the programming we did investigated various aspects of how can we look at the correlations, whether should we look at it regionally as a whole, looking at geologic units, looking at correlations that are based on a radius, because there's no right and wrong when it comes to scientific research. It's all about investigating and like seeing what works. Like you could investigate all aspects and there wouldn't be a correct answer. And that's the joy of the whole program, that there's no right or wrong answer. It's a matter of looking at what you can find. If you can find something, can you explain it in terms of science or not? And as a whole, I conducted the first RU experience in 2019. I got a set of results which I was pretty happy with. I presented this in a conference and I got some feedback. They criticized the project quite rigorously. You shouldn't take it as like you didn't do a good job in the program. It's like this is part of the research, like publishing, like the research progress. They criticized my topic in terms of two things. They criticized the methods I used, and they criticized some of the technical aspects I had discussed. So when I went back in my virtual RU experience, it was a matter of improving based on the feedback which we got. And throughout the RU program, I learned that this is a really important aspect, that in science, you must take feedback. Like sometimes I would dig deeper into the topic and I would focus specifically on one aspect and I would neglect all other aspects. However, my advisor would be looking from the outside and they would give you feedback. So overall, if I could sum up the RU experience, it's an eye-opening experience. I never thought, like when I graduated school, I never thought that research was something like offered. Like whenever I thought of scientists, I had this picture of like old men from the United States, from Russia, from Europe, but I never thought that we could actually do it. However, this program opened my eyes that we can actually do it, and it's not something that's hard. It just needs dedication and work. So I discussed the technical aspect of the project, where like the work that you need to be doing. However, the RU program is far more than just work. Throughout the program, I have made various friends from the United States, and I'm still friends with them. I am still in contact, and I got to visit places on the holidays and in the weekends, which I don't think I would have gone to ever. I had this idea that the US isn't a very welcoming place. However, the RU experience like opened my eyes in this aspect too, that it's a very nice place, and there is more than the life has more than just work to it. You should also enjoy your experience throughout the program. And I would like to conclude using a quote that I've heard from a RU graduate when I was an RU student. She said that the fascinating part of the RU program, that for a few seconds, you could be the only person on earth to know a certain fact, because when you're digging into your research topic, there might not be any other person in the whole world that looking at this specific aspect of a certain thing. So for some point, when you find this piece of result, you might be the only person that actually knows it for like a few hours at least, which actually fascinates me, and it led me to want to pursue a career in the future in this field, as I'm a pretty curious person, and I hope you all are. So thank you for listening to my experience, and we'll be happy to get your questions.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. That was quite insightful, and I'm sure the attendees here probably have gathered quite a lot of information with the presentation that you shared here, especially your experience in the program, because as a student, I would much rather hear it from another student who has already taken part in the program, which is basically like the best addition to just giving students program details about what the RU program is about, or all these. So you're basically a real life example of participating in this program as well.
If anyone is sending any questions through the chat box, please do leave them in the question and answer box, because we will only be reviewing the questions there. Okay, so let's see. Hussein Sajwani mentions that, hi, I applied last year, but then COVID happened. I graduate this summer, but I still have to do an internship. This RU can be counted as one. Can I apply again? Yes, Hussein, you can apply again, but I can assume that you're graduating this summer, which means you are a senior, and we try to provide this opportunity to these sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are in their first semester only. But you might still get a chance to apply in the RU program if we were able to accommodate as well. So I do encourage you to apply, because there would be there is a possibility of you being accepted in the RU program for the next summer, which is the summer of 2021. Okay, the camp is how many days? This is a question by Mahra. I believe you're referring to the RU boot camp. It takes up to, it's usually 3 days, but sometimes it would change. So it's usually 3 days of intensive, I wouldn't call it intensive, but like to provide the student with a solid foundation in space science and in research. So we would provide sessions that such as the introduction to the Emirates Mars mission, introduction to Python programming, and some mini projects known as the Build Your Own Space Mission, where you'll be able to identify certain ways on how to set your own objectives, what your aim is and what your plan is, just to familiarize yourself with what scientists tend to go through with things when it comes to space science research. Okay, this is a question that I get a lot, which is from Yezen. He mentions, how can a non-local be part of this program? Unfortunately, at this current stage, this program is only open to Emirati undergraduates. However, we do plan to have a program that is similar, or possibly open this specific program to non-Emiratis, basically. However, if you do share with us your contact at the email shared, which is ru@mbrc.ae, and mention that you would want to be placed in our contacts list. So whenever there is an announcement, a new announcement for international students as well, we'll be sure to send that over to you as well. But unfortunately, as of now, the RU program is only for national students. Okay, does the program accept freshman students? No, so it only starts off from sophomore students up until seniors in their first semester. Okay, another anonymous question. Do you prioritize science students on engineers, although engineers usually have more knowledge in technical softwares and programming languages, but pure science students seems to be always be prioritized. In the case of the RU program, I'm going to just share this. We do have a lot of engineering students. We do not, whether it's because you might have an engineer interested in space science research and exploration, and other than that, and then you do have students not even be interested in this and will be interested in other fields of science. So we don't only look at what interested in what they're good at, but we should where a person's passion lies. Great at engineering, but you're interested in the space field and you're willing to take part in conducting research and things like that, we'll be more than happy to have you on board. As one or the other, at the end of the day, the RU program is open for both, for basically in STEM fields as well, whether they are science, we do not tend to.
And Moses, just to add to that, I'm also in engineering too. And I got into the RU program. So, well, if you're in engineering, it shouldn't be a burden to you.
Yeah, thank you for that input, Abdullah. Okay, let's see. Mahra asks as well, mashallah, there's a lot of questions. I'll try my best to get to you all by 1 p.m. Mahra asks, on an estimation, how many students will be accepted in the summer of 2021? We tried to get up to at least 10 students. And this is a very, very rough estimation, considering that since we don't know yet whether the RU program will take place virtually or whether it will be face-to-face up until summer of 2021. In both cases, because if the RU program does become virtual, you would have a good amount of students who would not want to take part in the RU program, and some mentors who will not be, I wouldn't say wouldn't be willing, but would have this kind of boundary to mentoring students because of the time difference we have. So I think that should answer your question. So on estimation, I would say at least possibly 10 students. Okay. Mahra also asked, will you choose whether the student will go to France, US, or UAE? We tend to see where the student's preference lies, where would be a good place for them. Other than that, we would try our best to pair the student to the mentor that's right for them as well, to ensure that their knowledge is going to be exposed at the right place. So other than the student's preference being taken into consideration, we will also ensure that the student actually goes to the right place. Okay. I'm trying. I want to see if there's any question for Abdullah here. Okay, there's a question from Yazan to Abdullah. Do you pick what kind of research you want to work on, or do the mentors pick this for you? Also, how do you pick your partners or mentors? I believe I'll answer the second one. However, you can answer, do you pick what kind of research you want to work on, or do the mentors pick this for you?
So I guess I'll go with the first one. In general, as far as my experience go, no, you don't pick the research that you want to work on, but there's a lot of flexibility, as Moses said, because you can work with people in research that they work on, and you're in a group with a lot of people, so you know what everyone works on because you get to hear about it. So if it happens that the thing that you're working on is not the thing that you're the most excited about, there's always the good chance that you can work with other people in something that you like, or you can work with your mentor in something else that you like. There's a lot of room to maneuver here, I guess.
All right, thank you, Abdullah. As for your second question, Yazan, which is how do you pick your partners or mentors? As I mentioned, this is based on your own preference. There's one side of it, as well as we try to locate you in the best possible place where we would be able to see your experience or your knowledge being at least used and gained at that specific location as well. Okay, let's see. Anonymous question. Regarding mechanical engineering students, is there a program for them, since there is nothing mentioned about mechanical engineering students? As mentioned, this program is open to science and engineering students. So if you are a mechanical engineering student, you are able to register for this program. We did have a good number of mechanical engineering students as well that did take part in the RU program. So if you are a mechanical engineering student, please feel free to register for the program, and there will definitely we will definitely be able to accommodate if you do get accepted into this program. Okay, question from Bashayr. Where can we see the recorded session? This session will be shared in the Emirates Mars Mission website within the couple of days. So whoever does not get the chance to view this whole session, it will be up on the website for you to view, most likely under the research experience for undergraduates program tab as well. Okay. Abdullah, from an anonymous attendee. How much of your was needed in the research?
A lot. You'd be surprised. I'm sorry. Do you want me to go ahead or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot. You'd be surprised. Like a lot of the stuff I've learned in applied mathematics, like coordinate transformation, and a lot of technical stuff helped me a lot. But also, a lot of the stuff that I was doing were really new to me, and I was doing them with people who have been doing it for 30 years. So I did not feel embarrassed to ask a lot of stupid questions. And you would be surprised how fast you can be an expert on something compared to others just because you spend the time doing it. So yes, skills helped me a lot. Also, the skills related to coding, but there was a lot of skills that I have to pick up, and my mentors was a great help with it.
Thank you, Abdullah. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Okay. A question from Ken Al-Ahbabi. I hope I'm getting your name right. Can we join RU for our internship? This is basically between you and your home university. If they are able to count the RU program as your internship, then this can be, like, there's no issue from our end, as long as your main university is able to accept the RU program as part of your internship. So let's say if you do get accepted, or you would like to join this RU program and you do get accepted, I would encourage you to ensure that there is some form of agreement between you and your either dean of your own college or anyone from your own university that specifies that we can count the RU program as your internship, just to avoid any issues from happening at a later stage. Okay, a question from Alia. Based on what do you choose the students? We choose the students based on their background. First of all, whether it's a science or engineering. We consider their research experience. We consider their programming knowledge as well, and if they're actually interested in space science or research or anything that falls along the lines of the RU program. So these are certain things that we mainly take into consideration. Other than that, we tend to see, that's why we normally do a lot of interviews with students that do get shortlisted for the program, where it's kind of good to actually see where a student's passion lies when you're face-to-face with the student, instead of having a person type down a personal statement. It's easier to assess a student when they're face-to-face instead of typed. So these are the main things that we tend to choose the students based on that. Other than that, it would be something like the basic things, such as if you're a freshman to this program. So it would be things like that, but mainly to be knowledge in science, knowledge in research, and any programming experience when where your science passion lies when it comes to space science research. Okay. Let's see. Tasks. Is there any restriction for the GPA? Honestly, I wouldn't say we consider it isn't that groundbreaker where you, let's say if you have a GPA of 2.5, but I like with the work that you do, with the and where your passion lies, and where everything and where I see that that this specific student, even though that they have a GPA of 2.5 in comparison to GPA of 3.6, for example, that might not, that would be fine to take part of the RU program, but wouldn't be very interested in it. This doesn't really matter. We don't tend to. GPA is a good indicator, but it's not something we focus on 100% when it comes to accepting students to the RU program. Okay. Let me see what other questions we have. Abdurrahman asked a question that says, when I want to submit my application, I clicked on the submit button. Is there a way to tell if my application was submitted? One, you should receive an email, just to clarify. Second thing is that if there's an issue with the registration form, try a different browser if that's okay with you, and make sure that all the tabs have been filled out. That should work. But I'll get this sorted in the case that other students might find issues with their registration form as well. Okay, let me see if there's questions at the bottom here. A question from Hanan Ashamsi. She states, is there a preference for universities? If I'm not sure what you mean here, but if there is, we accept certain students from certain universities, I wouldn't think so. We don't have a, I wouldn't call this, but like a biased opinion on certain universities in the UAE. We basically assess the student himself or herself when it comes to the RU program. I hope I answered your question. If it isn't your question, please feel free to submit another question here. Okay. Yezen. I think I have about 12 minutes here. I'll try my best to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, question from Yezen. One for Abdullah and one for me. Okay, I have one question to you, Abdullah. What do you mean by there are a lot of people to work with?
Yeah, so the RU is not a program for just the students who are in this like Zoom session or from Mohammed Space Center. You'll be doing it with a lot of students from all over the US and the world. So in my case, I was doing it with 16 different students in LASP, and they're applying to it from all the universities in the States, and each one of them was doing a different project with a different mentor. So that's what I meant by different students. You'll be working by yourself with your mentor, but you always talk with your peers, and you do a lot of activities with them and spend a lot of time with them. So if you're interested, you can work with them in the
Abdullah, you cut off for a moment there. I'm not sure if we could hear you at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I answered from the question. I'll skip it.
We're good now.
You're good now?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was saying you're going to be working with, there are a lot of students there who are working on different projects with their mentors, and you're going to be working with your mentor, but these are going to be your friends who you're going to see a lot and probably be in the same place with them all the time. So you're going to have a lot of discussion with them about what they're doing. And if you're interested, you can help them with what they're doing or ask your mentor to do something else that they care about. So that's what I meant by working with other people, really.
Thank you, Abdullah. So as Abdullah mentioned, we're not the only center that has something like the RU program. You do find it in LASP and SSL as well, where they also accept students, either international students as well. However, let's say if there's a national student who is going to go to LASP for the RU program, they tend to work with students over there as well. Second question by Yazan in the same message is, okay, no, that wasn't the question. So yeah, from our end, we would take a rough estimation of at least 10 students for the next year, maybe. However, students do have encounters with other students, from international students and other mentors as well. Okay, an anonymous question here, which is, do we have to have a heavy knowledge in programming prior to the RU program? No, you don't. At least a good foundation in one programming language should be sufficient. Okay. Al-Reem asks, if it was a virtual program, will traveling abroad still be available? The reason why we try to have face-to-face interactions between student and mentor, this is a lot easier. However, the only reason why we consider a virtual program was mainly because of the COVID issue, and possibly if there are students who do have travel restrictions within their own families, this might be possible for them as well. At the end of the day, we try to accommodate as many people as possible, but we try to encourage a face-to-face interaction with their mentors and with other students as well. So traveling will only be available if we're able to basically make it past the border. That will be it. Okay, let's see. Okay, anonymous question. For the research experience, should my research be published or could be a research I have done for university? It can be both. You can share, I believe this is for the registration form, but any research experience you've had that is requested does not have to be something that has been shared in international conferences. It can just be something that you worked on in your university. Okay. Are international students studying at your universities eligible for the RU program? As mentioned, RU program is currently only for Emirati nationals, and if there are any other program that is open for international students, we'll be sure to share that with you. So just leave your email address, just send it through to ru@mbrt.ae so I could add you to the contact list, and we'll be sure to share any program announcements with you as well. Okay, I'll just try to find as many different questions for the last 7 minutes. Okay, let's see. Shamma Al-Tamimi asks, for people who applied before COVID and are thinking of reapplying, are we requested to provide new recommendation letters? I would say so. If you applied last year, then I think you can resubmit the same recommendation letter. However, we would always encourage that you do submit a new one each time you do apply for the RU program. But you can resubmit if you reapplied, if you applied before and you did not get accepted. I believe I answered that. Okay, Aisha Yamahi asks, do you accept students majored in cellular biology? If, yes, since this is under science, you are able to register. I wouldn't say, I won't guarantee an acceptance because there is a whole pool of students that register for the program, but yes, you will be eligible to participate in the RU program. Okay, I'm starting to see a lot of similar questions. Okay, let's see. Okay, Muhammad Al-Fahim asks, can I still apply? I think this you can answer this, Abdullah. Muhammad Al-Fahim asks, can I still apply if I'm studying abroad and not in the UAE?
Yes, I applied while studying at the University of Boulder here, so you can definitely do it.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, Mansoor Al-Ali asks, I will finish my first year on 1st of January. However, I will start my second year on Feb. I don't have time to download my academic transcript of my first year as it takes time. Because of that, we know the deadline of the RU programs on January 3rd. What should I do? You can upload what you currently have now. And in the case that you do get shortlisted and for an interview, possibly with the RU management team, you are able to restate this and maybe share with us an updated academic transcript later on in the year. So this can be requested, but you can just upload what you currently have now as a freshman student. Okay. Okay, so Zayed asks, the program is unlikely to accept students who are graduating in June or July 2021. No, by that time you would have already been a graduate while the RU program is running. We tend to not accept graduates for the program. That's why, as mentioned, students should be in their first year as seniors by fall 2021. I'm not sure if I asked you this question, Abdullah, but you can go ahead and answer it since I've been seeing the same question. Are students expected to already have a lot of technical skills, or do you learn as you work on the project?
So I don't think anyone would expect you to have any really knowledge at all about the stuff that you'd be doing research about. Like no one expects you to be an expert on space physics or the solar cycles. You'd be expected to have some skills, and the boot camp is really going to catch you up to speed with what's going to happen. So I'd really advise paying attention during the boot camp. But also your mentors are going to be a good guide because they're going to guide you towards they're going to give you resources to catch up, and they're going to be there for you throughout the whole process. So I would say don't be afraid of asking a lot of stupid questions because that's the best way to learn. But no, you're not expected to know a lot of stuff.
Thank you, Abdullah. Question from Wafa. When will the RU program announce if the program will go virtual or be held face-to-face? Well, if a student would be interested in to participate in the RU program, I don't think it would matter now because we would only be able to know about this later on in the year, possibly in maybe in March or April at least. So I would say if you would be interested, regardless if it was virtual or face-to-face, you can still apply. And then let's say if you prefer this to be a virtual experience, you can let us know and then we could try to arrange something from there. But if you are interested in joining the program, I would say try not to miss the deadline since you have time from now to apply, and then possibly we can work things out as we go. Okay, we have 1 minute. I believe we can answer like one more question. Okay, question from Zayed. How will accepted students be chosen to work abroad or local based on what? So it's basically based on your preference as well as where we see you fit in which location. Okay. This basically answers your question, Kanna Al-Ahbabi, where you mentioned, can we choose the uni we want to work in? So you can share your preference, but we will try to locate you in the right place. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. As mentioned, we're trying to close the session by 1. There's a few questions that are left open, but I think we covered a lot of questions that are repeated. However, as mentioned, if you do have any questions, please feel free to email us at ru@mbrc.ae. But since the program has just recently been announced, we're expecting a flood of emails as of now. So do send us your email through of any inquiry that you might have, and we'll be sure to respond to you within a week. Other than that, if you do send your emails through and you still did not get a response, truly apologize, but you will definitely hear a response from us within a week. So I believe that's it for now. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I hope everyone has a good day. Thank you very much for everyone for joining this session, and thank you very much, Abdullah, for sharing your valuable insight with the rest of the students as well.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for coming. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you very much.
First of all, good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for coming to this 2017 SETI Institute Summer Internship Lightning Talk series. And delighted to have you here. Delighted that everybody found us and found this location. We're really pleased to be here at SRI International. We're very grateful for this partnership. And for those of you who have been at all regular attendees of the SETI Talks series that were previously held at the Microsoft campus, a special welcome to you and a thank you for coming here. I know that a lot more people actually signed up for tonight's event than I see in the audience, so it may be that we've had some issues with directions or location, but this is, I'm very pleased to say, the new home for the SETI Talk series. And after quite some time of looking for new space suitable for this wonderful lecture series, after Microsoft said we're going to tear down our buildings and build new ones, we're very happy to be here. And in fact, I'm even more pleased to be saying to you that we'll be working with SRI. We're going to actually collaborate on this SETI Talks and SRI International lecture series. So the two organizations are going to work together to bring in really meaningful and impactful speakers. One of the changes that we'll be making from the previous series, for those of you familiar, is we do plan to do the talks in the evening, because we find that that gives access to more people. We can get more folks attending the talks when they're in the evening. You don't have to deal with leaving work, attending a talk, and trying to get back all inside an hour, which generally isn't very, very easy to do. So the evening series should make it possible for a larger audience and for more people to share in the work that we do and to hear from our other guest lecturers. The other thing is we are changing the cadence of the talks from weekly to monthly. So we'll be putting together a really wonderful series and program of talks. We have programs coming up on the Cassini mission, which ends next month in a spectacular fashion as the Cassini spacecraft crashes into Saturn for the last time on September 15th. We have lots of other programs coming up, and SRI will also be contributing with speaker programming for the series. So as we get more of the programming details, including the dates and times, et cetera, we'll be putting those on our website. We'll be sending them out, the information, to those of you who are signed up for the talk series. And as we always do, we'll continue to be recording these lectures and make them available on our SETI Talks YouTube channel so that you can see them and archive them and look at them at your leisure. So without further ado, I'd like to get into tonight's program and start by introducing our wonderful panel of speakers, and also the gentleman who has really done a terrific job while at the same time doing his own science as a principal investigator and researcher at the SETI Institute, and that is Matt Tescarino sitting to my left. So Matt, thank you for all the work you did to organize yet another wonderful summer internship program at the SETI Institute. Tonight you're Tonight you are going to hear from Sergio Esteban, who is at Cal Poly Pomona, and his mentor is Pascal Lee, who I think is also here tonight. Pascal is in the back with the dog, and the dog actually likes the talks and usually pays more attention than Pascal. So we're very delighted to have both here. And Alaline Teyi Bayan is with CSU Long Beach, and his mentor is Matt. Here with me. And then we have Erbuang Chidamatara from Cal Poly Pomona, and the mentor there is Jeff Smith. And Jeff, are you in the audience? So round of applause for Erbuang and Jeff and Alaline and Matt. We also have Kan Liu, who is at CSU San Bernardino, and his mentor is Virginia Glick, also from the SETI Institute, sitting in the middle there. You can wave, Ginny. Your mentor, her mentor, yes. And Troy Maloney is at Humboldt State University. Mentor is Frank Marchis, who is also with us tonight. And Jose Barrios with Cal Poly Pomona. His mentor is Jerry Harp, who could not be here this evening. And then we have Sean Haas, who's at Humboldt State as well. And his mentor is Uma Gorty, who is here this evening, and Paul Estrada, who could not join us tonight. But I would like to give a round of applause to these mentors who really work hard to support the work of their charges during the summer, and who volunteer their time at the beginning of the season to say, hey, I'd like to mentor and work with an undergraduate researcher. So a big round of applause for our mentors. And an even bigger round of applause for our summer interns. You see? That's right. You got it. Okay. With that and with the introduction from the dog, I will turn this over to Matt, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Bill. I'm going to start by saying a few words about the program. The research experience for undergraduates is a NSF-funded program. We're very grateful to the National Science Foundation for the primary funding, also with some supplemental funding from the NASA Astrobiology Institute. This is an interdisciplinary program. We focus on astrobiology and planetary science, which comprises astronomy, geology, physics, chemistry, biology, and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. All of those areas of research are represented in our program. This program was founded in 2006 by Cynthia Phillips, who's now at JPL. This is the 12th year that we've run our summer internship program. Jean Char served 3 years as the director, and this is my first year. Rosalba Bonacarsi leads our field trips, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We're also very grateful for the support of Edna DeVore, who's the Director of Education at the Institute. We have a formal partnership with the California-Arizona Minority Partnership for Astronomy Research and Education, directed by Alex Rudolph at Cal Poly Pomona, who helps us to recruit our interns and particularly to make sure that some of them come from underrepresented and underserved communities in our country. That's an important issue to us. This year we have 7 students whom you see before you. They were selected for this 9-week program. Among the things that we do as part of our program, we focus on educational experience and cohort building. The first 2 weeks, we have science talks from mentors and other researchers most mornings. Towards the end, we had a career panel with people representing various different career paths that our students might eventually take so that they could ask questions and just get some benefit of that experience. We had weekly meetings to just touch base with each other. They did a journal club where each of the students selected a research paper from the field that they're working on this summer and gave a presentation on it to the group so that we were all enriched and the students got the experience of researching a paper and giving a presentation on it. Field trips were also an important part of our program. We had some facility tours at Ames, including the wind tunnel and the supercomputer facility. We also took a field trip to Lick Observatory for an evening of stargazing, which is very memorable. There were also this year 2 weekend field trips to areas around the coast here, led by Rosalba, to study astrobiology, habitability, and life detection. Here are some pictures. There is a whale watching was part of it, and also observing wildlife. And an interesting aspect, there was also a lot of geology and environmental science. What they did, though, with these observations of different living creatures and other phenomena was to pretend that they were on an alien world, and to determine what could they know, like, is each of these things that they observed, is it alive? What can they observe about it? So you can see we have the kayaks and the seals and the whale watching ship, all of which were given this scientific life detection sort of treatment. So without further ado, we will introduce the first of our students, and each of these, I've arranged them so that we kind of start close by with Mars and expand our focus out to the farthest reaches of the universe. So we will start with Sergio Esteban. Here's your laser pointer, and here are your slides.
Good evening. My name is Sergio Esteban. I'm a mechanical engineering major at Cal Poly Pomona. My mentor for the summer was Dr. Pascal Lee. And today I'm going to talk about fog on Mars and implications for the extraction of water from the Martian atmosphere. So NASA had a historic meeting on October 2015 called the First Landing Site Exploration Zone Workshop. And the purpose of the workshop was to identify locations where humans can land, live, and work on the surface of Mars. Here is a topographical map. It contains 47 proposed landing sites. Dr. Pascal Lee and his team proposed a landing site on the west end of Valles Marineris here, as you can see. So I analyzed all 47 and evaluated and looked at each one. So here is an example of an exploration zone. In the middle, we have the landing site, a proposed landing site, and then we have a 100-kilometer radius exploration zone. So an exploration zone that has regions of interest that are located within this area. And there are two types of ROIs. There's a science ROI, and then there's ISRU ROI. So science ROIs are specifically to answer scientific questions such as astrobiology, geology, or atmospheric science. We have ISRU ROIs, which are there to use resources such as water, metal, or even dirt for radiation shielding. So resources from Mars are going to play a big role in human exploration. Out of all these resources, water is considered one of the highest resources because it has so many applications to human missions. And NASA has actually done some studies and suggested that atmospheric water extraction is a little bit impractical, but they did the studies assuming low temperature, low pressure. However, special regions with fog might be different. So here you see Valles Marineris on the east end of Valles Marineris, and here is Noctis Labyrinthis. You see this white is ice fog. So as we know, ice fog is composed of ice crystals. And this is more of a morning phenomena, seasonal phenomena that we see here. This is usually on mornings on Mars. So, so this might suggest that exploration zones in these areas that have a lot of fog might be a better choice. Keep in mind, not all 47 regions have fog, that local fog around where yeah, local fog. This process of extraction from fog is a little bit cleaner compared to other ISRU processes that have to handle large quantities of dirt. Also, extracting water from fog on Mars deals with, it doesn't deal with the planetary protection forward and backward contamination that other ISRU processes deal with. So that might be, it's gonna be a help for planetary protection purposes. And 0.03% of Mars' atmosphere by volume is actually water. So it's less than Earth, but if you have fog in a region, it can even double or triple the amount of fog in the atmosphere. So just to get a good representation, imagine you filled up 600,000 Olympic swimming pools. That is kind of an approximation of how much water there is in the atmosphere. So here are some terrestrial atmospheric water extraction techniques. As you can see, we have fog meshes that just condense, allow water to condense onto a mesh, and then the water runs down into a gutter, which is then collected and filtered and such. So this requires no power. It's very passive. Atmospheric water generators. These atmospheric water generators use condensation methods or desiccants to absorb or adsorb water from the ambient air. And it's a complicated process, but it might be viable for water extraction on Mars. And there are other processes as well on Earth, such as air wells, dew harvesting, or rain collection. And so far, we're in the process of finding something that might work for Mars. And fresh fog meshes and other liquid condensation systems do not work on Mars, since there is ice fog, not liquid fog. So ice fog, we know, is composed of ice crystals. So atmospheric water generators now look promising. So right now, few studies exist on this topic, and future work will mostly focus on designing a viable system for Mars. And your support is welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Next, we have Con Lu. All right, so here's your time and your laser pointer and your slides.
Thank you. So I just press this button. Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Con, and this summer I worked with SETI scientist Virginia Gulick. And today I'll be talking about gully systems on Mars, particularly the West Palliser crater area. So you see an image of Mars, and West Palliser is located at the crosshairs. If you don't know, the blue area is the northern lowlands, and the red area is the southern highlands. And this is an enlarged CTX image of Palliser crater, and it's around 15 kilometers across. And then I used the high-rise DTM to study the gully that I wanted to look at, which is shaded in red. So I made a perspective image of my gully, so you can see this right here. And what's notable about this image is that it cuts across existing bedrock layer, which is right here. And then I used a stereo 3D anaglyph in order to create a drainage diagram of the gullies, which is on my right, or your right. Also notable about this drainage diagram is the integrated tributary system that this gully represents. You have your fingertip tributaries up here, and then your intermediate tributaries, and then your main trunk gullies as you move down, and then they terminate in distributaries. And this kind of complexity is similar to systems on Earth, which are carved by water. And this is a slope map of my gully, and red area indicates higher slopes around 48, maximum 48, and then lower areas are around here, which go from 0 to 20, and the average slope of this system is around 20 degrees. And then next you have a depth diagram of the slope, and the deepest parts are, well, the deepest parts are indicated right here in the blue and the purple, and the depth, maximum depth is about 60 meters. And the capacity of this gully is about 6 million cubic meters, approximately 2,312 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And then in order to compare what I did in ArcGIS, which was the last slide, I used MV in order to draw transects across my gully. And these transects give us a cross-section right here. And this cross-section is from, oh, I can't even see it. It's red crosshairs, but it's up there. And the depth of this seems to be 50 meters at this part of the channel. And we combine all these little cross-sections together to get an approximate volume. And then here is a longitudinal profile of my gully, and you see the concavity of the gully, and the gully is around 2 kilometers long. And this summer, I also used chrism analysis to look at the mineralogy of the gully. For example, in this case, I was trying to look for H2O ice in my system, and the regions of interest after I applied the filters were in the red right here. And I pulled out the spectra from each pixel, and they're represented here. These are different locations. So H2O ice has a diagnostic feature at 1.5 microns, and it's a broad absorption feature. And I was looking for that, but as you can see, it's not really consistent. I might have had something here, but they're too broad, and there's nothing showing up here and here. So in conclusion, the complexity of the gully system, so the integrated tributaries and the concavity of the gully and the erosion into the bedrock suggests that they were carved by water. And continuation of this project, you can do more 3D modeling, you can do more chrism analysis, obviously, and statistical analysis of the other gullies in Palakir. And I would like to say thank you to Virginia Gulick, Matt, and Natalie, who's not here, and everyone in my office for helping me with everything. So yeah.
Okay, next we have Alaline Bayan. Okay. Here's a laser pointer if you want it. And you use arrow keys, and this tells you how much time has gone.
Good evening, my name is Alaline Bayan, and I'm from... good evening, my name is Alaline Bayan, and I'm from Cal State Long Beach. And I was working on giant propellers on this summer. And my mentor is Matt Tescarino. The unsuccessful attempt of the embedded moon to open the circumference gap can bring a disturbance, and that disturbance we call a propeller. And the propeller is located on the outer ring of A, on the Saturn, on here. All the giant propellers are found over there. And the propellers can be small. That is, when the small moon try to open, it might not be a full gap, so that brings a local disturbance. That is what is seen here on the upper picture. And the shearing flow of ring materials can make a propeller shape that is surrounded by the embedded moon. And this picture shows that propeller shape. So far, scientists were studying on tracking the orbit of object on a free empty space. But now they are just trying to track object moving inside the disk. And the whole aim of this propeller study is about that. And the propeller size can be different. It can be small because of a small embedded moon in the disk, and also can be bigger. A big embedded moon of 1 kilometer in diameter can create a giant propeller. And I have some pictures of giant propellers. For instance, this is a Earhart, and you can see a picture from Kazini image. And these propellers were discovered, many of them were discovered during the equinox of Saturn. Saturn has an orbital period of 29 Earth years. During this time, there are 2 times when the sun shines edge on the ring. And during this time, these propeller structures cast a shadow, and they track this shadow back to find those big structures, which we call giant propellers. And here we have the lit side and unlit side of this propeller. We call this propeller Santos Dumas. And this one is the lit side, and this is the unlit side of. For the better comparison, I put it on the top of the other. And we can see it. This is the lit side and the unlit side. And I was working this summer on this image. It's a raw image from Cassini spacecraft. And I use the caviar to just access these images, which are on area numbers. I access this and work on these pictures by image analysis using the ideal programming. And this is the actual project. The project I was doing was just make a rectangle section on the propellers and take the XY coordinates. Then from the coordinates, it's possible to find the radius grids, and using the interpolation method, we find the radius centers. In the same way, we find the longitude centers for both the lit and for the unlit side. Once we get these parameters, we use this to find the method of comparison of the lit and the unlit brightness. To do this, we go for the unlit side and take the radius we already calculated. Then we go back to find the corresponding Y value in the lit side. We do this also for the longitude. Once we get this longitude and radius, we subtract appropriately from, we subtract the R center and L center, and we get numbers. We use the interpolation of linear feet and find the XY of the lit side. And the very reason of doing this is because the propellers are orbiting in the lit and unlit side with different time span. They change positions, and we need to get the same region on the propeller that have the same component for brightness comparison. That is a project, the main aim. Thank you.
Next we have Troy Maloney. Here's a pointer, arrow keys, and your time is there.
Hello, everybody. My name is Troy Maloney, and this summer I had the honor of working with the international team of researchers, all involved with the Gemini Planet Imager, or as I will call it from here on out, GPI. So the goal of GPI is to directly image young Jupiter-like exoplanets with the 8-meter telescope Gemini South in the Chilean Andes. GPI uses a coronagraph and advanced adaptive optics system to image planets with a contrast of up to 1 million times dimmer than the stars that they orbit. So why do we care about direct imaging other than it can get us really cool images of planets orbiting other stars? Well, for one, it allows us to see light that is emitted directly by planets themselves, not contaminated by the stars that they're orbiting. Two, it opens up the parameter space to different types of planets that we would not be able to see with other methods, namely large or massive planets that orbit really far away from their parent stars. So before we can look at pretty pictures of exoplanets, we have to do a lot of data processing, and that's what I was involved with this summer. So before I came onto the project, the GPy team had developed a Python package of functions called PyClip. It was able to do a couple of different image processing techniques, but then there was something called RDI, which PyClip was not able to do yet. But then they recently implemented it into PyClip, and my job was to test if this new PyClip RDI was as effective as the older methods. So RDI is a type of image processing utilizing something called a reference image library, which is basically just a library of images of stars. And basically this was just all of the images that GPy had collected. This was about 15,000 images. And what you do with RDI is you find the images in the library that are most correlated or most similar to the images in your data set, and then subtract those from your the science image, or the one that you're trying to clear up. So before you can do good RDI, you have to weed out the bad reference images. And these are things like some sort of failure of the telescope, or maybe there's a object present in the background of the image, or there's a stellar companion or a planet orbiting the star. And to get the best results with RDI, you need images of stars that are uncontaminated by any of these things. So a lot of what I did was looking through the library and trying to weed out these bad reference images, because there were, even after removing the ones that we knew about, there were a bunch that we didn't know about. So I developed a little program that would help us identify these unmarked bad PSFs, or bad images. So after you get all the bad PSFs out of there, you're able to do some pretty cool stuff and get this type of, you can get these images where each frame shows another, like, more reference images subtracted from your science image. And you can see that after about 200 images taken out, we get a pretty clear picture of the planet 51 Ari B. This is on the left there are images that I generated with PyClip RDI, and this is comparing them to previous iterations. And you can see that at first glance it looks pretty good. Looks like PyClip is working pretty well. It's hard to say whether it's working better or worse than previous iterations. We have to, now the plan is to test and see if we can numerically, or if we can quantify how well RDI does compared to the other iterations. So in conclusion, it works, but we don't know how well yet. We can't say definitively how well it works. And that's future work for the people after me. What we did get out of this was a new tool for cleaning up reference libraries, which is great because PyClip is open source and available for use for any instrument that uses a reference library. And these include not only ground telescopes, but also upcoming space telescopes like James Webb and WFIRST. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Troy. Right, next we have Erbong Chidamatara. Right, there's a pointer if you want it. Arrow keys to do the slides, and this tells you how much time.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Erbong Chidamatara. I am an aerospace engineering major at Cal Poly Pomona. And this summer I worked with Jeffrey C. Smith on optimizing the TESS planet finding pipeline. TESS is a new NASA exoplanet finding mission called stands for Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. It will be an all-sky survey that will observe stars tens to hundreds of light years away, and will be observing 10 to 100 times brighter than Kepler targets. And the proximity of its observations will allow for easier follow-up measurements for planet characterization. such as mass and density. It's expected to find about 1,000 planets smaller than Neptune's and dozens of Earth-sized planets. And the pipeline that it uses for data processing will be a pipeline adapted from the Kepler mission. So the specific component of the pipeline that I worked on this summer is called Transit Planet Search, or TPS. It's the component of the pipeline that detects transit signals. And how it does that is that it folds the light curve upon itself to identify signals where they stack up on top of each other and amplify it. And then it is then compared to a simulated transit model to account for any observational characteristics such as limb darkening. And in this picture, each of those red lines are identified as transit signals. And this would be the smooth transit signal curve that we would get. So we want to validate TPS by determining certain truth values for each target, which are true positives, false negatives, and true negatives. And we do this by comparing the simulated data that we know to be our ground truth with the simulated data in TPS. And from here, we can figure out our recall and precision values for each target. And what we do is we would plot it against what's called a multiple event statistics. And what this tells us basically is how strong our signal is and how confident we can be in our signal. Since we don't have actual flight data, what we can actually calculate is expected mess given our ground truth. And that is the equation for it that we use. So there's a couple of parameter changes that we can work on to try to optimize TPS. One of the examples that I use here is changing the minimum transit detections from 2 to 3. And the importance of this is that if you have a minimum of 2, it allows for more stuff to get in and possibly increase our false positive rates. So we try to see what differences we can get by increasing that minimum to 3 transit detections. And we would plot it, and we would compare it to a theoretical sensitivity performance, which is that red line at 7.1 sigma. And as you can see, there wasn't much of a difference that we saw, which was kind of not what we expected. We kind of expected that the recall would be higher in a 3 minimum transit. We don't know. We would have to further investigate why this is so. From our previous slide, you can see that we did calculate our error bars, and this is the equation we use for it. We multiplied it by 1.96 to ensure that we're looking at the 95th percentile of confidence, and it's proportional to the number of targets we're able to inject into it. And the more we are able to inject, the more we can reduce our values, our error values. We can also plot recall as a function of both mess and period. And what we weren't expecting is sort of the inconsistencies between this plot and the previous plots. And that will need further investigation, specifically why it doesn't look quite the same. We also measured the sensitivity in the entire pipeline, not just TPS, but the data throughout the pipeline. Sorry about this. So this is our actual graph that we used. I mean, this is the actual plot that we plotted out, and it's, as you can see, it's doing quite well. So what we know is that TPS is detecting planets, which is a good thing. It's always good to verify and validate that what we're doing is actually what we're expecting. And we were able to experiment with various other parameters that we adjusted. This was just one example. And really, to do all this, it required a supercomputer, but we only had one workstation to really work with. And I want to thank everyone, my mentor, Jeffrey C. Smith, especially Matt, our director, and everyone that supported us this summer. Thank you.
All right, great job. Okay, next we have Sean Haas. Laser pointer, arrow keys.
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name's Sean, and this summer I worked on a project concerning computational modeling of protoplanetary disks. So first off, what's a protoplanetary disk? So they're disks around young stars that form planets. And they're primarily composed of dust and gas, and they're observed as spectra in the infrared range. As an illustration, the top plot here shows what we'd expect a spectra of just a star to be. Then here's the same spectra if we had a star surrounded by a continuous disk composed of dust. What we observe in protoplanetary disks, however, is a gap between a visible and an IR bump, and that gap's due to a space between the star and the disk itself. So I'll come back to plots like this that we generated using computational methods and compare those. So the other aspect of protoplanetary disks, or the aspect that we cared the most about, was dust phase, and specifically how that evolved in time. And there's two ways that dust can change in a disk over time, by either interacting with other dust in the disk or interacting with the gas phase of the disk. Now, dust is important because that's what actually forms into planets. And if we're able to understand how the dust evolves, then we can understand more about planet formation, which includes understanding the fraction of stars that are able to form planets and what chemicals are available for planet formation. And specifically what we're going to be talking about tonight is the radial drift interaction in the disk. So radial drift is where dust grains get pulled in towards the star as they grow in size. So if this was the only force acting, then we'd expect there to be no planets, because as the dust grains increase in size, they get pulled out of the disk and deposited into the planet and be gone. We wouldn't have grains to form planets from. However, we can directly see this isn't the case, because we do in fact form planets, and we can see through observations I'll show on the next slide that we're retaining larger grains than we'd expect in a pure radial drift case. So there's a little bit of a confusing plot because this axis is reversed, but up here, basically this is dust size from small sub-millimeter size to large centimeter regime size dust grains. And this is for a whole set of different star forming regions across different time scales as far as age. So we have a 1, 2, and 3 million year samples. And as we can see, if we were only dealing with radial drift, we'd expect the grouping to be up here in the range of having smaller particles. But we're seeing that even at 3 million years, through observations, there is still a retention of large dust grains. So one way we can account for this, and that my research tried to examine if this was the case, is having fractal instead of spherical grains. So currently, most models assume that dust grains are spherical for simplicity's sake. However, we know this isn't the case. As an example of this, this image is a picture of a dust grain taken from our own solar system, and it's clear to see that that's not spherical. So how we model these fractal grains is through a parameter called porosity, which is basically a measure of the void space compared to the solid space, where a 0 for a porosity would be a fully solid sphere, and a larger number like a 0.9 would be something that's very fluffy, so almost completely void space. So the key question here is, do fractal grains affect dust disk evolution, and if so, how? So the first model we ran was for generating unobserved spectra. So going back to the first slide where I showed sample spectra. And what we found was by increasing the porosity, the curve of the spectra shifted considerably in the lower wavelengths, but didn't